a Town Square media station serving all of South Jersey. This is 97.3 ESPN, home of the Philadelphia Eagles.
They've got 'em!
WENJ HD, Millville, Atlantic City.
Josh Hennig filling in for Mike Gill on a Tuesday afternoon here on 97.3 ESPN FM, the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. We are live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. So many ways to get a hold of the show. We got a busy show coming up. The Phillies with a big win last night. Also, Eagles back in the building. They're in the building, folks. Also, there's a whole new set of rumors out there and speculative reporting about the Phillies and the trade deadline, Ben Simmons, and more. So we got a lot to get to here on the Sports Bash. Josh Hennig filling in for Mike Gill here on 97.3 ESPN. Coming up on the show, Frank Klose, the Phillies mailbag at 2:40 p.m. Sports betting expert Jeff Nadu joins the show coming up at 3 p.m. as he does each and every Tuesday. Andrew DiCecco, football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. And at 5:20 tonight, sports columnist for the Bucks County Courier-Times, Tom Moore, will join the show. Coming up here on 97.3 ESPN. So we got a lot to get to on the Sports Bash today. I'll get to the rumors and speculation in just a moment, but I got to start with what we do know for sure, which was last night's Phillies win. We're going to find out how big of a win that was, because this team needed a pick-me-up, the Phillies. And as I've stated before, in a town where the Flyers made all those moves and transactions, and the Phillies are just days before the trade deadline, and the Eagles are reporting to camp, and the Sixers are on the cusp of arguably their most important offseason in franchise history. And yet, you are the Phillies. You are playing. Nobody else is playing. You got to go out there and get the job done. And last night, what did the Phillies do? The Phillies went out there and they found a way to win. You know, the Nationals have the worst record in baseball in the month of July. I said this yesterday on the Sports Bash. You have to win these games. You have to beat the Nationals. Minimum 3 out of 4. And last night, it was not looking good for a while there. The Phillies were down. They had to crawl their way back into it. And then there he comes. Mr. Clutch, Mick Clutch, whatever you want to call him. Andrew McCutchen wins the game for the Phillies in the bottom of the 9th. Could this be a turning point for the team? Could this be the moment where this team makes the turn and goes on another run? Because they were 10-4 before losing their 3 games in a row, before the Braves series, before the Yankees series. This team still has the easiest strength of schedule the rest of the way. So could last night's win be the key? Because reports are out today at MLB.com that the Nationals are selling the entire roster except for Juan Soto. The report out there is that everyone on the team is available for the right price, except Juan Soto. So the Nationals are on the verge of being gutted. You have to beat this team. Because right now, the Mets and the Braves are punching each other in the face. You have a chance to make up ground and solidify yourself as contenders in the NL East. You are the team playing, not the Flyers, not the Eagles, not the Sixers. The Phillies have a chance to gain some ground right here, right now. So can they do it? I'm hopeful. What do you guys think? You can always join the conversation As always, the text board is open at 609-403-0973. 609-403-0973. Also, you can text in and reach us via the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. It's free thanks to First Bank of Seattle City. Aside from all your Phillies, Sixers, Eagles, and Flyers coverage and high school sports over at 97.3 ESPN.com and 97.3 ESPN mobile app. Thanks to First Bank of Seattle City. You can also message the show throughout the show, whether it's a Sports Bash with Mike Gill, Game Night with yours truly, and all the shows here on 97.3 ESPN throughout the week. Josh Hennig filling for Mike Gill. You can reach out to the show through the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. And, of course, you can jump on the live stream as well. So there's a plethora of ways to get a hold of the show no matter what you're doing right now with your day. And we appreciate you choosing to join us right here on 97.3 ESPN. So what do you guys think? Do you think last night's win was a turning point? Do you feel this team maybe found the corner, they turned the page, or was last night just another win on the season? It doesn't have to be one or the other. It could be both. You know, this could be a turning point and a win on the season. But you guys let me know what you think as well. Because according to John Heyman, the Phillies are having trouble gaining traction on Craig Kimbrell. So the Phillies were one of the teams who were the top suitors for Kimbrell. And they're not gaining traction in that trade department. Now, that could change, obviously, at any point in time. But looking at this team right now, you have to rationalize that they need closing help. And that's why Heyman goes on to say, Richard Rodriguez from the Pirates is a possibility for the Phillies. Young catcher Rafael Marchand interests the Pirates, according to Jim Salisbury of NBC Sports Philadelphia. So, do the Phillies drop out of the Craig Kimbrell sweepstakes if the price tag is too high? I was having a conversation about this yesterday on the Sports Bash and with a buddy of mine after the show. And I want to emphasize this again to all of you right here. This comes down to a bidding war for these Cubs players. Bryant, Rizzo, Kimbrell, Baez, any of those guys. Same thing with the Nationals. If you can't meet the asking price of the team doesn't have to trade the guy. You can give me any trade scenario you want. But I ask you, does said team want that deal? And this is not just a Phillies thing. This is any sport thing. I've seen so many trade scenarios with Ben Simmons. I've seen a ton of them, actually. And there's a report out there that the Raptors have turned down one trade offer from this that was talked about between the Sixers and Toronto so far. Because those don't know, according to Jake Fisher, a Bleacher Report who's been on the Sports Bash with Mike Gill multiple times, talks between the Raptors and Sixers are considered to be the most advanced of any early conversations Philadelphia has had for Ben Simmons. Now, with all that being said, if you're the Sixers or you're the Phillies or you're any of these teams, you may not be able to get what you want because what you're offering may not be what another team wants. So, as a result, you may want Craig Kimbrell. You may be in, remember the one report was hot pursuit? The Phillies were in hot pursuit of Craig Kimbrell, right? And now it's looking like you're losing traction on that deal. So if you're the Phillies and all you have to give up is a young catcher in Marchand, because realistically the future of the backup catcher position is Knapp and Marchand at this point. You're going to keep one or the other. And according to a lot of reports, Knapp is very popular in the locker room. He's a guy that a lot of the players love. They admire, they respect. He helps a lot of the pitchers. He's a valuable backup catcher. So in order for you to get Richard Rodriguez, all you got to give up is Rafael Marchand. That's not exactly a bad deal. And at least that covers one small thing you need. You still need starting pitching. You still maybe need another bullpen arm theoretically. But if the Cubs are asking for too much with Craig Kimbrell, all right, then you know what? Maybe you just got to go elsewhere because maybe you could use those assets to get a starting pitcher. If you are the Phillies, what's more important right now? Is it getting another starting pitcher or getting Craig Kimbrell? Now, I asked Bob Wankel this question yesterday. He said starting pitcher. Bob Wankel for Crossing Broad covers the Phillies. I tend to agree with Bob because this team needs starters. After Zach Wheeler, do you trust any of the Phillies starters? Spencer Howard, Vincent Velasquez, Matt Moore, potentially Chase Anderson. We have no idea when Zach Eflin's coming back. I told you guys there are 7 pitchers who are theoretically available who all have a better ERA than Zach Eflin this year, who the Phillies could go get. And you know what? If you're losing traction on Craig Kimbrell, don't spin your wheels. Get out of that lane and go somewhere else. Say, Cubs, listen, we appreciate it. We're moving on. Go get Richard Rodriguez. Go get you a Kyle Gibson. Go get you a Mize from Detroit. Go get somebody else who is not going to cost you an arm and a leg. Because Dombrowski said it, and he said it multiple times. He's not giving up the best prospects right now. So if you're not giving up the best prospects right now, then maybe Chris Bryant, Craig Kimbrell are out of reach. And by the way, how about the fact that we had a person who texted the show yesterday who messaged in and said, how about Chafin from the Cubs? Well, Chafin just got traded to the A's. You know how much that grinds my gears? Not because I loved Chafin, the reliever from the Cubs, but because the A's are making trades, and the Braves are making trades, and the Blue Jays are potentially making trades, and all these teams are making trades like the Rays, and the Phillies, as of July 27th at 2:11 p.m., have made no trades. I have the itch, folks. Maybe you do too, because, again, the Flyers made 4 trades in the last several days. And by the way, the Flyers have made another transaction. If you go to 973 ESPN mobile app right now, you will see that the Flyers have added another defenseman. So the Flyers are wheeling and dealing and making moves and making additions, and Dave Dombrowski is just sitting on his hands, it feels like. You know how aggravating that is? Now listen, maybe you guys feel differently. You can reach out to the show again, the 973 ESPN mobile app. You can message in. As always, the text board is open as well, 609-403-0973. And we are live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Still to come, the Phillies mailbag with Frank Klose. We'll ask him about some of this stuff as well, coming up at 2:40 as well. Let's get to your guys' questions. We see every week that you guys throw a lot of questions Frank's way for the Phillies mailbag over at 973ESPN.com and 973 ESPN mobile app, powered by First Bank of Seattle City. So we'll be getting to a lot of Philly stuff today. Now, I promised I would get to some more clarity about these Ben Simmons rumors. So as I mentioned earlier, Jake Fisher of Bleacher Report is the main person reporting this. Now, there's speculative reporting out there that says that the Sixers and Raptors have discussed a deal that involves multiple players and draft picks. And as of right now, the Raptors, they're not interested in the initial offers, okay? And I'm not going to dig too deep in what the offers are because, again, it's speculative reporting. I can't verify that the people reporting this are actually giving us information. So I like to stick with people who I know who are reputable reporters. But we talked about this for weeks now, about Kyle Lowry's potential to come to Philadelphia. And whether it's someone like Shams Charania, whether it's someone like Jake Fisher, whether it's someone like Adrian Wojnarowski, whether it's someone like Brian Windhorst, all the reputable people in the business are all saying that there could be a deal done between the Sixers and Raptors at some point. But if you're going to do a sign and trade with Kyle Lowry, it's more likely than not you're going to have to send Ben Simmons. And I told you guys before, you might not be able to make a one-on-one deal of Ben Simmons and Kyle Lowry. Not because the Raptors hate Ben Simmons, but because the Raptors are kind of in that strange enigma right now where they're kind of half in a rebuild and half not. And if you're the Sixers, You want talent right now. So draft picks and young players who need development may not be the best return on investment. You want someone who can play right now and make an impact on the team, and that's where Kyle Lowry comes in. Now, anyone else beyond Lowry, again, I don't know how interested or desperate or curious a team like Toronto is about taking on some of those players. Listen, a guy like OG Anunoby, Fred VanVleet, they would make sense for the Sixers in terms of depth. But I'm not going to sit here and act like I love any of those aspects, any of those options. Josh Hennig filling in for Mike Gill here on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN Sports Bash, being brought to you by Matt Blatt Nissan. The all-new Matt Blatt Nissan is now open on the Black Horse Pike in Egg Harbor Township next to Home Depot. Visit them online at mattblattnissan.com. As I mentioned, the Eagles are at training camp today. We will be talking about the Eagles and the NFL throughout the day. Of course, football at 4 with Andrew DiCecco coming up at 4 p.m. Also, we talk with Tom Moore, sports columnist of Bucks County Courier-Times at 5:20. Tom will talk to us about the Phillies, the Sixers, and the Eagles. He covers all the Philly teams over there for the Bucks County Courier-Times. As the Eagles are in the house, Lane Johnson saying school's in session when they reported today. It's always interesting to see when guys start reporting. And by the way, Adrian Wojnarowski is reporting that he expects Simmons trade talks to get serious this week. Read into that what you will. So again, we now have multiple smoke screens going up. Multiple scenarios where you have multiple people reporting there might be something going on with Ben Simmons trading. Now, I don't know if it's going to happen specifically before or at the draft, but obviously a trade of Ben Simmons before or during the draft might actually be easier than not. Just because of the fact that if you get a third team involved and you want to start slinging draft picks, it might be easier. It might just be a little bit easier to make the deal done in terms of asset movement. Now, again, Kyle Lowry wants to come to Philadelphia, according to reports. Sixers want Kyle Lowry. Question is, will it happen? Can it happen? We're going to find out. Again, the Phillies win last night. Was that a turning point for you? Ben Simmons, latest speculation. You guys still thoughts on that as well? Eagles training camp starts today. They are in the building. They are reporting. They will be on the practice field tomorrow. So football is officially back, at least in the building, on the field, in your life. Of course, we have coverage for the Eagles all over the 97.3 ESPN mobile app at 609-403-0973 is the text board. You join the conversation. Also, 97.3 ESPN mobile app. You can message in, as well as we are live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. A couple messages coming in early in the show. Let's see here. Let's jump over here first in the order you guys came in. We got a text over at 609-403-0973 says, wins like that for the Phillies are a turning point. I hope it gives them the juice they need. Getting Kimbrel would help. But with 70 RBIs from Harper and JT also needs to be beefed up for them to do anything to make the playoffs. It's a difficult balancing act because to me, I understand that they got to do something with center field. The center field situation is still a glaring eyesore for this team, right? The center field situation is still a situation that you need a guy with a more consistent bat out there. And that guy, is not Odubel Herrera long term. Odubel Herrera is a Band-Aid. He's a patchwork. You have a hole in the hose under the hood of your car. You put some duct tape on it until you can replace it. You don't want to drive that long with just duct tape on that hose under your hood. But if you got to drive for a little while, you can do it. That's what Odubel Herrera is. He's duct tape on a problem that needs a full replacement part. So, listen, I know that Starling Marte is a name that's been thrown out around a lot. But the Phillies aren't the only team calling about him. Apparently, the Yankees have called about him and other teams as well. He is going to be someone, because he's a free agent, he may not require as huge of a return as a guy like Byron Buxton. Ideally, if you're the Phillies, if you want to get a center field replacement, here's your ideal scenario. The Yankees go get Byron Buxton, and they leave you with Starling Marte. So now the Marlins are left there realizing that they lost a suitor for Starling Marte because Buxton is off the market now. So now, if you are the Marlins, you got to take the best offer you can get. That would be best case scenario for this team. Now, I'm not saying it's ideal, but I'm saying that it's an angle. All right. If you can walk out of this deadline with Richard Rodriguez, Starling Marte, and a starting pitcher, if I am a Phillies fan, as I am, I would say that would make me happy. I'd be good with that. Starting pitcher, a bullpen arm, and Starling Marte. That would be good, because then you covered three different needs. You covered the bullpen, you covered the starting staff, and you covered center field. I like that idea. I don't love it, because I think you need more than one starting pitcher to be successful, but which gets back to what other thing Dombrowski said over the weekend. Dave Dombrowski said on Saturday to the media that Cole Hamels is only signing with a team that guarantees him a rotation spot. And Dombrowski said there's a possibility that they would have a better answer about their rotation moving forward by the end of this week. So if they only acquire one starting pitcher this week, so let's say your rotation becomes Wheeler, Nola, the guy acquired, Zach Eflin whenever he comes back, and then fill in the blank for the fifth slot. That fill in the blank could eventually be Cole Hamels. Just putting it out there. Now, I'm not saying it's going to happen, but I'm saying that's one scenario as well, that you can walk out of the trade deadline with technically more than one pitcher. So there's a lot of ways you can go with that, but I understand what the texters are saying. You need more bang in the lineup. And McCutchen has done a great job at picking up the pace for this team, but he's not 100% the solution. Ryan chimes in here on the show saying, how many times this year have we said, is this the turning point for this team? Not good enough. Listen, Ryan, to me, I don't know which is the right answer. Is the Phillies a turning point, or are they not a turning point? Because you win that game last night, that should carry you some momentum, some pick-me-up, some get-up. But look at the game tonight. By the way, Wheeler pitches tomorrow, not tonight. So you know who's going for your Philadelphia Phillies tonight? Yeah, tonight is Matt Moore. I have no idea what I'm getting from Matt Moore. Now, you got Fetty going for the Nationals, and he's a guy that you can knock around and get some runs off of. But listen to Matt Moore's season. All right? These are the games that Matt Moore has pitched this year. I'm just going from the beginning of the year to now. He's given up 2 runs, 5 runs, 5 runs, no runs, no runs, 1 run, no runs, no runs, 2 runs, no runs, 2 runs, 2 runs, 2 runs, 2 runs, 6 runs in the last game versus the Braves. So I have no idea what I'm getting from Matt Moore from game to game. Am I getting the guy who gave up 6 runs versus the Braves? Or am I getting the guy who had 9 strikeouts, gave up 2 runs versus the Marlins to start before? I don't know what I'm getting from him. So I need to upgrade the starting pitching staff. And that's kind of where I stand on that. I get to hear more of your guys' messages coming up throughout the show. Again, keep them coming. Josh Hennig filling in for Mike Gill here on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN FM, 97.3 ESPN mobile app. It's free thanks to First Bank of Seattle City, where you can check out all of our Phillies, Sixers, Eagles, Flyers coverage, as well as message the show as well through the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. And as always, we are live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, where you can watch the show, join the conversation there as well. So you have multiple ways to listen to 97.3 ESPN FM anywhere you go, the app, your radio, and streaming online. Josh Hennig filling in for Mike Gill at Josh Hennig on Twitter. Sports Bash 97.3 ESPN.
Turn it on. Leave it on. The Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN.
Always wanted a Jersey Shore mansion? With a $186 million Powerball jackpot win, you could buy the shore home of your dreams, plus one for everyone in your family. It's just that many millions. Anything can happen in Jersey.
New Jersey, this is not a test. If you're looking for a deal on a new vehicle, get to Matt Blatt Nissan and get $2,500 off on every new 2021 Nissan Murano SUV in stock.
Oh, yeah, it's on at Matt Blatt Nissan.
Yes, get $2,500 off every new 2021 Nissan Murano in stock. Drive it today with 0 down and pay 0 interest for 60 months. Plus, Matt Blatt Nissan will buy your current vehicle for cash or trade it for top dollar. What do you get? $2,500 off. 0 money down, 0% interest on every 2021 Nissan Murano in stock. And don't forget our fast track checkout. So bring any vehicle and Matt Blatt Nissan will buy it for cash or pay top dollar for any trade in Egg Harbor Township next to Home Depot or online at mattblattnissan.com. Negative equity will be refinanced into new vehicle. Rate qualifications exist. Not all will qualify. 0% KPR financing based on 1667 per thousand borrowed. Offers can't be combined. Call 877-289-6670 or go to mattblattnissan.com for complete details. Offer ends 8/6/21. It's on at Matt Blatt Nissan on the Black Horse Pike, Egg Harbor Township.
go see the Birds play in Vegas against the Raiders this fall? Travel to the game in style with Philly Sports Trips. Check out their travel packages today at phillysportstrips.com.
Now, back to the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN.
Josh Hennig back here on the Sports Bash, 97.3 ESPN. About 10 minutes from now, we'll be joined by Frank Klose, a Phillies insider for 973ESPN.com. We'll join us to talk more about the Phillies. Phillies Mailbag is popping up there on the 97.3 ESPN mobile app, powered by First Bank of Seattle City. Get more of your guys' thoughts and comments here. 609-403-0973 is the text. We'll also chime in via the 97.3 ESPN mobile app message show. Join the conversation there as well. And of course, you can watch the show every day live. Just follow 973 ESPN on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Check us out as well. By the way, at Josh Hennig on Twitter. You want to bother me off-show hours, you can always do it there. Interesting text that came in. I got an interesting message here. And I think it goes back to our conversation yesterday, because Jeff Budenpookie says, man, it feels so good to have football back to normal somewhat. And it is, because you see guys actually out there reporting for camp and everything. But just as Jeff says that, another message came in right after him. Message says, I'd rather have Jalen Hurts and get 4 wins than Deshaun Watson and get 9 wins. What example are you setting? When the NFL's COVID policies are more strict than their sexual abuse policies. So this gets back to the conversation we were having yesterday. And Texter, I will tell you the same thing that I told Tom from the Villas yesterday. The problem with the NFL isn't the policies. The problem is the inconsistency in their putting out punishment. They don't have a consistent record at all of punishing anybody. And that's a huge problem. To me, it's less about specifically Deshaun Watson and what he is being accused of doing than the problem is with the NFL's handling of the situation. The NFL should just theoretically just put him on the commissioner's exempt list and be done with it. But they haven't, because the NFL is afraid that the NFLPA will try to take it to an arbiter and cause a whole fiasco. The league is trying to figure out what is going on with these charges. Now, according to Deshaun Watson's lawyer, there are 10 criminal charges coming against him. This is on top of the 22 civil suits coming against him. So you're right. The person who messaged in is right. I don't have their name, but I still want to acknowledge them. The situation with Watson is, what example are you setting if you're willing to give up a bunch of trade assets and a bunch of players to get a guy who is being accused of some pretty disturbing, disgusting things off the field, and who may or may not play for you this year? Because whenever the NFL decides to make a judgment, when the NFL decides to do anything, you're stuck holding this problem in your hands. That's why I don't think an NFL team will trade for him. I think we're in a situation where no team is going to want to trade for a guy who, let's be realistic, may or may not play for you this year. Trade for a guy who may or may not even be available to be on the field this year. It's a huge problem. It's a huge issue to work through. Now, my opinion is you don't trade for Deshaun Watson at all. You don't even take the risk. But I do take exception with one thing the texter says. He says, I'd rather have Jalen Hurts to get 4 wins. Here's the thing people forget. The Eagles had 4 wins last year because Carson Wentz himself lost 3 games. Carson Wentz had the most interceptions in the NFL. He had the worst quarterback rating in the league. He was arguably the worst quarterback in the entire league, statistically. So how am I supposed to act like Jalen Hurts can only give me 4 wins when the other quarterback almost purposely lost games last year? Carson Wentz literally threw some of the dumbest interceptions I have ever seen, or at least since Jamarcus Russell. And I'm supposed to sit here and act like Jalen Hurts only to 4 wins? I think you get at least 2 more wins on last year's team with Jalen Hurts starting instead of Wentz. I think that a lot of people are completely underselling Jalen Hurts. And it's another reason why I'm not going after Deshaun Watson, because I want to see Jalen Hurts get his chance to play this year. You've heard me say it multiple times here on 97.3 ESPN. You gave Kevin Cobb, Michael Vick, you gave Mike McMahon, Corey Detmer, AJ Feely, Sam Bradford, Nick Foles, Carson Wentz, Josh McCown, Nate Sudfeld. All these dudes have run through this franchise and have gotten chances to play quarterback for this team over the last 2 decades. But you're not going to give Jalen Hurts that chance because you want to take a risk on a guy who has 22 civil cases and potentially 10 criminal complaints against him. That's not a wins or losses thing. That's a common sense thing. Josh Hennig here on 97.3 ESPN. Filling in for Mike Gill on the Sports Bench. We'll get back to the Phillies coming up next. Frank Klose with the Phillies Mailbag will join us to get more into what is going on with the Phillies ahead of the trade deadline. We're just a couple days away. It's this Friday, 4 p.m. We've seen the A's, the Rays. All these teams are making deals. Will the Phillies finally make a deal anytime soon? Well, that's Frank Klose. That and more. Phillies Mailbag. We open it. Coming up next, right here. Josh Hennig filling for Mike Gill on the Sports Bash. 97.3 ESPN FM. The 97.3 ESPN mobile app. It's free. Thanks to First Bank of Seattle City. And we are live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, where you can watch the show as well. Just follow 97.3 ESPN on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter.
Turn it on. Leave it on. The Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN.
On some models excludes Corvette with GM financing, excludes prior sales. See dealer for details.
By now, most people know that nobody beats a Bennett Chevrolet deal. Because when you buy a new Chevy from Bennett, you pay the same as any GM supplier employee pays. That's right, not 1 cent more. Plus, Bennett gives you all the rebates that can add up to 25% off MSRP. That's up to 25% off. And of course, Bennett Chevy has 0% financing available. Think about all the ways you save at Bennett Chevrolet. Plus, right now, we want your trade. So we're paying a minimum $7,000 for any clunker. You heard right, a minimum $7,000 towards any pre-owned in stock. Nobody pays more than Bennett. You can imagine how much more we'll pay for a good trade. And there's more. You'll never feel any sales pressure and never waste time with stressful negotiating because our non-commissioned sales staff is paid on your satisfaction, not how much you spend. Nobody beats Bennett Chevrolet, and we mean nobody. Find new roads at Bennett Chevy, Egg Harbor Township, and BennettChevy.com.
I said Chantilly lace and eggshell, not matte.
Colby's Interior Design Consultancy is floored with new clients.
Wait, what am I looking at here? This looks like plaid.
They need an admin with an eye for design and a knack for numbers.
Okay, hey, look, take a look at this. Do those numbers look right?
Indeed can help them hire great people fast.
I need Indeed.
Indeed you do. Screen for quality candidates with a
from a variety of local businesses. Always wanted a Jersey Shore mansion? With a $186 million Powerball jackpot win, you could buy the shore home of your dreams, plus one for everyone in your family. It's just that many millions. Anything can happen in Jersey.
You can watch the Sports Bash live now on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Search 97.3 ESPN or visit our website, 973ESPN.com.
Josh Hennig filling in for Mike Gill on the Sports Bash Tuesday edition, 2:41 here on 97.3 ESPN FM, 97.3 ESPN mobile app. It's free thanks to First Bank of Seattle City. And we are live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, where you can join the conversation as well. Phillies mailbag right now over at 97.3 ESPN.com, the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. And joining us to talk more Phillies right now is Frank Klose, our Phillies insider for 97.3 ESPN.com. Joining us on the stream. Frank, how you doing today?
I'm great. How are you, Josh?
I'm doing all right. So before we get into the mailbag, I got to ask you about the John Heyman report that came out a little bit ago. Basically, John Heyman is saying that the Phillies are losing traction on Kimbrel. But then he throws out there in a kind of collaboration with Jim Salisbury's report that Richard Rodriguez could be had for Marchand, the catcher. And Frank, I got to tell you, I said it earlier, if my options are overpaying for Kimbrel or getting Rodriguez for Marchand and then using other assets to get other players, I think I'm going with the latter scenario.
Yeah, Craig Kimbrel is a very expensive player too. So last we checked, the Phillies had about $4 million under that luxury tax threshold. Even though they've said they might be a little flexible with that, you don't want to spend all your money on one position if possible, right? So Richard Rodriguez, much more reasonably priced. Not a bad idea to get somebody like him who's still very, very good and use some of that money elsewhere because the Phillies have a few holes to fill.
Now, ideally, what in your mind, Frank, is the best scenario? And I don't mean unreachable. I don't mean something that's ridiculous. If I ask a regular Phillies fan at the gym or listening to us on the text board or they message in on the app, they're going to say, I want Chris Bryant. I want all the, I mean a realistic scenario that if the Phillies walk out of the trade deadline with XYZ, Frank Klose gives them a thumbs up.
They need multiple things, right? So they probably could use two relievers. They could use at least a starting pitcher. I don't think it's realistic they can add two, but they have a lot. They have a lot they need to fill. And as I've said before, one of the things that Dave Dombrowski is really good at is finding those perfect complementary pieces that nobody else seems to be thinking of or kind of off the radar of most people. So, one of his big deals that helped the Red Sox win the World Series in 2018 was not adding a big name player. It was trading for Steve Pearce, who you still may not recognize that name. Some baseball fans might have known him at the time and forgotten him already. But Steve Pearce really was the right piece for that 2018 Red Sox team. So I have a lot of confidence in somebody like Dombrowski to find the right moves or combination of moves that will really supplement what they have and try to maximize their playoff chances as much as possible. And they may not be sexy names to the people that are listening, right? We all know Craig Kimbrel, right? He's been a lockdown closer for many years in Major League Baseball. And by the way, he's having a really good year, but his last 2 years were not very good. So he's somebody that's very expensive next year. So if he has a really good year this year, but then has a poor year next year, that's much like the ones he had in 2019 and 2020, well, that could look pretty bad. So I don't think you need to worry about getting the big names. I just think you need to worry about getting the right names. And if you haven't heard of them, check them out because Richard Rodriguez is pretty decent.
Yeah, and if you can get him, like I said, for something that's inexpensive, something that's not going to cost you a lot. To me, Frank, if the Phillies walked out of this deadline, and I'm just throwing out a scenario with Rodriguez, Marte, and let's say, I don't know, Kyle Gibson from the Rangers, let's say, just throwing out a scenario. I think the Phillies check a lot more boxes than if they go all in on Kimbrel or go all in on Bryant, which gets to one of the Phillies mailbag questions you had, which was about Chris Bryant. And I think it's a great point you brought up in the article about Bryant and why he may not even be a fit with the Phillies?
Yeah, so right now, when you talk about those needs I just mentioned, right? We talked about bullpen, we talked about starting pitching, and then center field, right? Those are the spots where the Phillies seem to be looking. There's a few reasons I don't see Bryant being a fit right now. One of them is the money, right? So with that $4 million, again, they're willing to go over, but they need to be smart about it still, I believe. And we can't expect them to go $30 million over this luxury tax, right? Because that just isn't realistic. But if they go over a little bit, it'll be for impact. And I think that they need impact at those other positions a little bit more than they needed at third base. Alec Boehm has struggled a little bit this year. I think that's very, very fair to say. Gotten some good contributions out of Raul Torreyes, of course. Again, Raul Torreyes, Chris Bryant, there's no comparison. But another point that I would like to throw out there is that Chris Bryant is not signed beyond 2021. So if you're going to trade your prospects, and the Phillies don't have a whole lot that they can trade from, right? You mentioned Marchand, right? Who's a useful player for the Phillies now as sort of that third catcher. But if you trade a Marchand, you can probably live with it. But if you keep going deeper and deeper down that prospect list, you need to make sure that you're trading those prospects for players you have more control of. Chris Bryant is somebody in 2 months. Maybe the Phillies will sign him. Who knows? I expect Dave Dombrowski to sort of reimagine how this Phillies core looks. And Bryant, who knows? Maybe they sign him in the offseason. I wouldn't say that would never happen, depending on which pieces move. But for right now, I feel like with the priorities being elsewhere, the money being what it is, and the prospects being what they are, I think the Phillies should use those prospects in those other areas. And I think somebody like Chris Bryant is very unlikely to come to the Phillies at this trade deadline. Now, that's not to say at the end of the trade deadline, the Cubs throw off a soft deal and the Phillies grab it. Then you say, wow, I can't believe he was that cheap. Things like that have happened, but I just don't see it being a match. By the way, did you see Bryce Harper used a Chris Bryant bat yesterday?
Yes. Listen, Bryce Harper has never been afraid of sending a message, right? Remember last year with JT Realmuto, how many times he did that? Like, we know Bryce Harper's unafraid. And listen, if there's a scenario that Bryce Harper could convince Bryant to sign here, that'd be great. But like you said, do you really want to give up all it's going to take to get him at the deadline and then still risk him walking, even if Bryce Harper's on the team? And listen, Bryant doesn't have to play third base. He could play center field. He could play the outfield positions. So we know he could do other things. But at 30 years old, former league MVP, 4-time All-Star, he's not coming cheap.
And I wouldn't put him in center field. I think the corners, Harper, McCutchen, they're not going anywhere. They're locked in those jobs. He would have to play third base if he's on the Phillies, and I think they can get by with Boehm for now if it's a matter of 2 months versus 2 years, like somebody else might be that they can trade for.
Frank Klose joining us here on the Sports Bash. Phillies Mailbag is up right now at 97.3 ESPN.com and 97.3 ESPN mobile app as the Phillies are just days away from the trade deadline. Frank, before we get to another question on the mailbag, I want to ask you, I was going through the list yesterday, and I found 7 guys who have a better ERA than Zach Eflin, okay, who could be available. Guys like Gibson for the Rangers, Mize from the Tigers. There's guys out there that could be acquired. And I remember Dombrowski saying over the weekend when he asked about Cole Hamels that a team that signs Cole Hamels is promising him a rotation spot. And that Dombrowski right now can 100% do that until the end of the week, until the trade deadline is passed. Is there a part of the Phillies that are looking at the deadline and maybe trying to get multiple pitchers, but if they don't, Cole Hamels could be a fallback option?
I think that's a fair way to say it. I was actually prepared to say to you, I don't think that Cole Hamels is a good fit for the Phillies because he's going to have to spend the month rehabbing or going down to Clearwater and working his way up, starting at AAA a little bit, and then finally coming to the team maybe by September. So if you're treating that as a fallback, then I think that makes more sense. You try to get somebody that can go into this rotation right away, and if you can't do that, then maybe you pick up the phone and call Cole Hamels. Last I saw, and I forget who had this report. I think it was Ken Rosenthal of The Athletic. But Cole Hamels is still looking for more money than teams are willing to offer him. I don't know how much he's going to get. Most teams have spent their budget by now, and what's left in the budget is going to get spent at the trade deadline. So he can't be too picky. So we'll see. Maybe after the trade deadline, when there's then probably fewer possible suitors, maybe you have a shot. But I tend to think Cole Hamels will end up on the West Coast, either with the Padres or the Dodgers. That's just my personal opinion.
Now, Frank, I'm going to reappropriate one of the questions on the mailbag, because the question from Kevin was, do you think John Middleton and Dave Dombrowski have a plan long-term outside of just trying to make the postseason? And Frank, I'm going to reappropriate it this way, because I still have Jason Stark ringing in my ears from MLB Network the other day, because Jason Stark said that Phillies ownership trusts Dombrowski just completely, and that whatever he tells them, they're going to do. So to me, I'm wondering how much of this is a long-term plan by Phillies ownership, and how much of what's going on is Dave Dombrowski's plan with Sam Fuld, and that the organization is saying, listen, we're trusting you to clean up the Matt Klentak, Andy McPhail stuff.
Yeah, this is a team that spent 5 years on a rebuild that didn't work, right? You can. I don't want to write them all down, because I listed them all in this article, or name them all now, because there's so many players that were supposed to be pieces in this rebuild that just didn't become pieces in this rebuild, right? I could go on about the Crawfords and the Kingerys, and I could go on and on and on. So I think right now you're in this situation where you've got these really good core pieces, right? Right now you have JT Realmuto, Bryce Harper, Zach Wheeler, and Aaron Nola. 4 really strong players on a 26-man roster. And so I think Dave Dombrowski kind of took the job saying, look, you've got these pieces. We can build around them to try to win this National League East right now. I think he sees a path to let's face it, look at the standings. The Phillies are very much in this, and the division is not that strong. So I feel like he's trying to build around them for now, not damaging the long-term in terms of prospects. So that, the prospects like Mick Abel and Bryson Stott, I don't see him trading them. Funny, the buzz the other day when Stott came out of a game. I never heard why, but he played. He has been playing. Right. But I feel like he wants to let those guys develop. Most of the Phillies' talent is at Class A and Double A right now. That's really what it's about. So they have a brand new scouting director as of last year with Brian Barber. He's been doing a good job with the drafts, drafted 2 really nice pitchers in his first 2 drafts in the first round. Those guys need some time to develop. So he's trying to long-term let those players rise through the system, but at the same time work around that little core that right now is in their prime and try to make the playoffs in the National League East where there is a path. So that's what I think he's trying to do. I think he's trying to simultaneously rebuild and simultaneously make the playoffs, because if you don't do that, then your other option is to trade those 4 players I just mentioned in their primes for prospects, which, as we saw last time, don't necessarily work out. So when you have talent like that, it's almost like you want to just go and make sure that you go for it. And I think that's what he's trying to do, and not break the bank at the same time.
He is Frank Klose. Give him a follow on Twitter at Frank Klose. It's Frank Klose with a K. The Phillies mailbag is up right now at 973ESPN.com and the 973 ESPN mobile app for full details on everything we talked about today and more, as the trade deadline is just days away. Friday, 4 p.m. Eastern time. Frank, I'm itching. The Flyers are making tons of moves in the last week and a half, and the Phillies have done nothing. And ironically, a person messaged the show yesterday mentioning Chafin of the Cubs, and he gets traded last night to the A's. So
I wrote about him the other day. He would have been a nice fit, but there's still other good guys out there. It's tough to get locked in on one name right now.
Well, I'm just itching. I'm itching for the Phillies to do something, Frank. Hopefully they do it soon.
Yeah, I think you will see something. I promise you that. You will see something. And again, it might not be those sexy names but if they're the right names in the end, I think everybody would be happy.
I can agree with that. Frank, have a good one. Enjoy yourself.
Thank you, Josh. Good to talk to you.
Josh Hennig filling in for Mike Gill here on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. Sports Bash being brought to you by Indeed. With Indeed Instant Match, just sponsor a post and immediately receive a short list of quality candidates whose resumes on Indeed match your job description. Visit Indeed.com/credit for more details. That's Indeed.com/credit. Coming up on the other side, we'll be joined by Jeff Nadu, the one and only, the man, the myth, the legend. Talk more about the NFL and the NBA draft, which is this Thursday here on 97.3 ESPN FM.
Are you finally ready to sell that motorcycle or ATV collecting dust in your garage? Harley, Honda, Polaris, Yamaha, or anything like it. RumbleOn.com will pay you cash today.
Hey, everybody, it's Mike Gill again for my guys over at PropSwap.com and the PropSwap app. And, of course, the Olympics are here, Olympic basketball. We always talk about golf. Luke, basketball, golf, the Olympics, perfect for prop swappers.
Yeah, the 3M golf tournament last weekend proved extremely popular. We sold a bunch of Cameron Champ winners, so congrats to all those customers who got paid on that. Obviously, a week prior, we sold a bunch of Colin Morikawa to win the British Open. All of the customers cashed on that, and all the people who sold tickets on all the other golfers made a ton of money buying and selling on golf. And to your point, the Olympics have golf, and we are seeing a bunch of Olympic golf tickets get posted. So, Morikawa, again, is going to be extremely popular. Cameron Smith, just looking through a bunch of different golfers. But the Olympics have golf, and I see no reason why this won't be, again, extremely popular on the site.
Hey, and it seems like a great opportunity to take a long shot basketball the way Team USA has been slipping up. Maybe get an Australia team. One of those long shots, you might be able to flip that on PropSwap as well. But don't forget, guys, training camp is here. The NFL is back, and there's an interesting Eagles ticket out there.
Yeah, looking at the odds on Philly across all the different sports books, they're at 66-1 at one sports book to win the Super Bowl, but they're 100-1 at DraftKings. So if anyone can get over to Resorts World at the Resorts Casino and buy up those DraftKings tickets at 100 to 1 on Philly, I have a lot of people around the country that will buy those tickets from you for a huge profit.
Sports bettors cash in early and often when they list long shots on PropSwap. The average monthly seller makes $500 a month on PropSwap just posting and selling tickets. So join them by going to PropSwap.com or download the PropSwap app today. Make your profit. Do it now. PropSwap.com and the PropSwap app. Luke, as always, keep making people out their money.
Thanks, Mike.
PropSwap, where America buys and sells sports bets.
A Town Square media station serving all of South Jersey. This is 97.3 ESPN, home of the Philadelphia 76ers.
Simmons pokes it away, steals it, sidesteps him, and jams a two-hand throwdown.
WENJ HD Millville, Atlantic City.
Josh Hennig filling for Mike Gill on a Tuesday here on 97.3 ESPN FM. The 97.3 ESPN mobile app. It's free thanks to First Bank of Seattle City. And we are live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. We'll get back to your guys' thoughts and comments in just a bit. Of course, text board is open as always at 609-403-0973. Also can message us through the 97.3 ESPN mobile app and also on the live stream. Just follow 97.3 on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Speaking of the stream, joining us right now as he does each and every Tuesday at 3 p.m., he is the man, the myth, the legend. Jeff Nadu joins us here on 97.3 ESPN wearing an Eagles shirt there. Jeff, how you doing today?
Pretty good, Josh. How are you?
Doing pretty good. So, obviously, you're wearing the Eagles shirt. Eagles season is here. They're finally in the building. And one of my favorite parts about football being here is there's so much speculation that's rational and completely irrational at the same time. So I want to ask you, as a more rational individual than most of the world out there, what is reasonable expectations for the Eagles this year? Because I know a lot of people, there's a handful of people who are like, this team is no more than a 4-win team last year. Another group of people are like, this team's got to win 8 games this year. Where does Jeff Nadu fall on the Philadelphia Eagles?
Well, I think you made the point that I'm rational. Yeah, very much am. Very realistic as well. I'm not one of these Eagle fans that's going to tell you they're going to go undefeated every year and win the Super Bowl. I pretty much put every team in this city under the microscope. And I think the Eagles are actually going to be a pretty decent football team this year. Look, here's the issue, though, Josh. It really all comes down to the guy under center. If the guy under center plays well, I think they will win games. And I think with the schedule they have, I think they're a team that could compete to get into the playoffs. Why can't they? They finally have some people to throw the football to. Your offensive line, you would hope that the injury luck last year doesn't go over to this year. I think everybody coming back healthy is huge there. You've got a budding running back in Miles Sanders. You've got some depth now with Gainwell and Kerryon Johnson and Boston Scott. And, you look at the move they just made recently. I have been on the milk cart and the soapbox for months. It's time to sign Steven Nelson. He's a guy that could come in right away. He can take away just attacking the other corner opposite Darius Slay. He gives you something on the back end, an instant starter. You can allow guys like McPherson and other younger guys to get some reps, but they don't have to be dependent on like a Cravon LeBlanc had to be late in the season last year. I just love that move. You've got Avonte Maddox back into his normal nickel position. I like their pass rush. It's always been very good. I think it's a pretty solid football team. I'm really honest. Again, though, the biggest issue they may have comes under quarterback. If the quarterback plays well, I think this could be a fringe playoff team. I really do.
Well, Jeff, the other thing is that, let's be realistic, Carson Wentz lost them 3 games by himself last year.
Correct.
He's statistically the worst quarterback in the NFL. So Jalen Hurts is better than the worst quarterback statistically last year. You're probably going to win some games because at least one thing Jalen Hurts doesn't do is stare down receivers and throw interceptions because he's too stubborn and too egotistical to actually look around the field.
Yeah, and, you look at Hurts, from the 4 games or so that we saw him in, he played very well. I think it's important to remember, Josh, he was throwing to Acme cashiers and mechanics down the street. That's who he was throwing to last year.
Right.
you've all of a sudden got some guys in here that can catch the football, and it allows guys that actually played pretty well, like a Greg Ward, to kind of go into becoming a Jason Avant type of player. They don't need to be, the number one option here. You've got a guy at Dallas Goedert who's now the tight end of this team. You've got the offensive line as well. You had third or fourth string guys playing last year. Jack Driscoll had to play a lot of snaps. You had guys that have no business on a starting roster on a football team playing last year. So there's a lot that I think that even after he played decently well in those games, now you look at this year, he should really kind of elevate to another level.
I know a lot of books have the Eagles set at 6.5 wins. Would Jeff Nadu take the over on that?
Yes, and Jeff Nadu already did. I think 6.5 is too low. I think at worst, this is a 7-win team. The schedule, like I said, is pretty easy. You've got to figure, I think if you can flip in the NFC East, I think you're going to have a pretty good opportunity to win 7 games or more. I don't think their schedule is particularly difficult. In fact, I know it isn't. As I said, it's one of the easiest, if not the easiest, in the NFL. I think the first 2 games out of the gate, I think that's a very winnable game down in Atlanta. Eagles usually play decently well there. I think the 49ers are a bit overrated. I think they can go beat the Carolina Panthers, the Raiders. The Lions are a layup. That might be the worst team in the NFL. The Broncos, that's a very winnable game. The Jets. This schedule is laughable. I think if they can coin flip and go, let's say 3-3, 4-2, possibly in the NFC East, because I think they're coin flippy against Washington and the Giants. I think Dallas, they'll be underdogs, but I think they can win 1 of 2 at least there. They've got some tough ones, obviously the Chiefs and the Bucs, but largely this is a very winnable 8-9 game schedule, I think.
Oh, I agree with you on that. Jeff Nadu joining us here on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. Josh Hennig filling for Mike Gill on a Tuesday. Because the other thing, Jeff, with the Eagles is you mentioned the offensive line a little bit ago. They had the most offensive combinations in NFL history in a season. So if you get some health out of the offensive line and you're in a division where no Tomlinson over with the Giants anymore, I still don't believe the Cowboys are going to be that much better defensively all of a sudden just because they have game win. And Washington, they're a great defense, but you only face them twice this year. So if you get split with Washington, deal with the Giants and the Cowboys, you're at that 7-8 win almost automatically. And okay, fine, you lose to the Chiefs and the Bucs. Who isn't going to lose to the Chiefs and the Bucs this year?
Yeah, and I think you have some real layup games in the Broncos, Jets, Lions. The Panthers, you should win those 4 games. And I think if you can do that, I think you'll hit that over. I think it's just too low. This is not a 4-win football team to me. Now, look, they have – and I truly believe this, Josh. I think there's a lot of things to shake out with this team. I think they will end up trading for Deshaun Watson. Just if you ask me right now what I think they're going to do, I think the most important thing that people need to understand about Deshaun Watson, and Josh, occasionally people find themselves, and again, I know, an emotional thing, it's a touchy subject, right? But the truth of the matter is, Deshaun Watson has not done anything criminally wrong, according to the government or the state or whoever. No one has brought criminal charges. And this stuff is not going to shake out until next year. I guess I'd ask myself, if I'm the NFL, what exactly are you suspending him for? I think that's what they'll say, right? Because there are other civil cases, yes.
Right, but for example, Jeff, we know the NFL is super inconsistent because on one hand, remember what happened with Adrian Peterson? He got banned from the league for a year. That was something very minimal in the grand scheme of things. Ray Rice never went to jail, never was criminally charged. Him and his wife are still together, but he was banned from the league. You know what I mean? Or Dante Starworth, he drinking and driving, murdered somebody, went to jail, suspended for the year, back in the NFL. This league is so inconsistent. So I don't even know what side of the bed Goodell's going to wake up on tomorrow when it comes to Watson.
Yeah, it really is. But I will say this. The Eagles are doing as much due diligence as they can to figure out what the outcome of this is going to be. And, look, they know a lot more than fans do. I know fans have their thought on what they want, but it's important to realize these are all again, that's the law side of it. This is allegations. I'm not saying Deshaun Watson didn't do this. He may have. I have no idea. I wasn't there. But again, until they're convictions or they settle in court or whatever, they are allegations. It's that simple.
Yeah, and also it's just a murky gray area that we just don't know yet. We just don't know, and I think the unknown is what's really the difficult part here.
They are, and this is a concern if you're, an Eagles fan. If they do bring him in, I mean, it is going to be a huge. I mean, you thought Michael Vick when they signed him.
This is 10 times bigger, Jeff.
This is going to be out of control in this city. I mean, people are going to, I remember when they signed Michael Vick. This is a guy, Michael Vick, that did his time, paid his debt to society, no matter what you think of him, and deserves a second chance, as does anyone that commits a crime, I think, and they're let out of prison. I remember seeing at preseason games, there were hundreds of people down there protesting.
Yep.
Do they want to take that on? They better believe that what they have is concrete and nothing's going to happen. Because if that all happens, this could be a really big issue for this team. And I think everybody knows that.
Jeff, what about the other side? What if you give up all those draft picks and those players, and then he plays 3 games for you, and he's suspended the rest of the year?
But Josh, I think that's what I'm saying. I think there's got to be something that they're getting from the league that says, look, he is not going to be suspended. It's not going to happen. Now, the concern is you give up all this because, look, they don't just want picks. They want players and picks, right? And I'm guessing Jalen Hurts would be part of what's going to go on here. So let's say you do get him for a season, right? And maybe you lose the second play. I don't know, whatever they do. Because, look, if he comes here and is the quarterback of this team, they're probably the favorite in the division if he's the quarterback, right? The question is, what if he, in turn, next year, bad things – because he has said he's not settling on any of this stuff. He's going to prove that none of this is true or whatever. But let's just say he's suspended until 2023. Well, then what? And at that point, it's all a mess anyway. What do you do then? I guess you just draft someone next year, right? But you won't have those picks, so you can't do that. So it is a complete mess, but I think they know a lot more than we do, and let's hope they're crossing all their T's and dotting all their I's here.
Absolutely. Jeff Nadu joining us here as he does each and every Tuesday on the Sports Page at Jeff Nadu on Twitter. Jeff, before we get to the NBA draft, I want to bring up, I've been holding this for you. So I stole this information from Doug Kazarian of ESPN. So the last 10 times the Dallas Cowboys were favorites to win the division in Vegas, they only won the division once. Every team that's been on Hard Knocks has never been to the Super Bowl, and only one team got to the conference championship game. So that tells me that everybody who thinks the Cowboys are going to be good this year needs to take a long walk on a short pier and cool off.
Well, I'd be one of them. I bet them to win the Super Bowl already. But look, I hear you. Listen, the good thing about trends, they're meant to be broken or changed. We'll see. I think offensively, they're a top 3 team.
Yes.
But they have the same, I think, question mark. They have a quarterback coming off a major injury. How does he play? They may have some injuries. We never know. That's the great equalizer in football, injuries. You could be the Chiefs, but Patrick Mahomes could get injured in the second week. We never really know. But I think you made a good point. Defensively, the good thing they have is they can't get much worse than they were defensively. You got to figure like they did some things to improve. And the offense will be so good that I don't think they have to give up 19 points a game to win games. I think if they could just make a 3 or 4 point uptick in defense, I think they'll be just fine.
Now, over at Jeff Nadu on Twitter, the Jeff Nadu mock draft for the top 10 is over there on your Twitter. Yeah. And I'm very intrigued by the top of this draft because you have been saying forever about Cade Cunningham. I remember you last year talking about Cade Cunningham here on 97.3 ESPN. But there's speculation out there, and I want to ask you that he didn't have a great workout, that Jalen Green had a better workout. Do you believe any of this speculation, or do you think it's all just a smokescreen?
No, I think this is about as cut and dry as Trevor Lawrence to the Jags was. I mean, I think he's minus 80,000 to go number 1. Listen, the Detroit Pistons aren't stupid. No one is not taking Cade Cunningham. Cade Cunningham's the number 1 pick. It's that simple. And I know workouts are workouts. Pro days are pro days. Sometimes you have a good day, sometimes you have bad. But what Cade Cunningham is to me, he's Ben Simmons, a little smaller, but Ben Simmons with a jumper, and he's just a better player overall. He's what I think Ben Simmons could have been if he had a shot. That's what Kate Cunningham is. He's a transcendent type of player. I think he's going to go in, I think, to a decent basketball team. I think they have a decent core there. And I know they didn't win a lot of games last year, but they have a good coach. They play defense. They've got a lot of young kids. I think to them to get the number one pick, I think is huge. Detroit is on the uptick to me. I look at them a lot different than I look at like the Rockets or Cleveland. But I think the top three teams are going to get three really good basketball players. I think Cleveland sets up really well to take Evan Mobley. He's exactly what they need there with Okuru and Garland and probably Colin Sexton. I think they need a kid that can run the floor, Chris Bosh type of player. I like Evan Mobley a lot.
Now, outside of Cunningham, you mentioned a couple guys already, but do you have a favorite guy who's going to go in the top 10 who's not named Cunningham that you think that people may be overlooking or discounting or underselling?
Yeah, I think Bouknight out of UConn is a guy that I really like. I've watched him play for a long time, and I remember, just some of the games that he just completely took over. Now, he was injured last year in certain parts, but this is a guy that gets to the basket really unlike anyone in this draft. I think he's one of the better scorers you'll find. Kind of just a quick guy. He's risen really high in this draft. At one point he was a mid-teens player. Now he's a kid that I think probably goes possibly top 5. I think the Orlando Magic look toward maybe taking him. They need some offensive talent there, and I think he's a guy that's got real athleticism. He's a great scorer, good shooter. I think he does a lot of things well. I really like Bouknight out of UConn. Another guy I continue to be very interested in. I don't know if he's a top 10 player. I have him kind of in that 10 to 15 range. Kai Jones out of Texas. Texas is always kind of a team that has these long, lanky, just floor runners, the kids that can run up and grab the basketball. Kai Jones is a guy I really like. I think he has kind of a better shade potential of like JaVale McGee, but I think better, good lob threat, good defender, can run the floor. I think at a place like Charlotte with LaMelo Ball, maybe at 11, that makes a lot of sense. Maybe down in San Antonio, they need to get kind of younger in the front court. So, I like him a lot as well.
Kind of do with the draft, kind of not to do with the draft. Obviously, there's speculation out there that the Raptors might consider trading the 4th overall pick. At the same time, there's a lot of speculation that the Raptors Sixers can make a trade, sign and trade Kyle Lowry, come to the Sixers, and Ben Simmons might be involved in that deal somewhere along the way. How do you feel about that rumors going out there that Ben Simmons could be out of here, according to Woj, potentially this week?
Yeah, listen, I've said I told Mike this, I'll tell you this, I'll tell anyone that will listen. There is absolutely no shot Ben Simmons is on this roster by the beginning of the season. This is not going to happen. He's out of here. And look, the Toronto Raptors, I think it works perfectly. The Philadelphia 76ers need a different point guard, okay? And they need a different point guard. It makes perfect sense. Look, if the Toronto Raptors don't do anything, they're going to take Jalen Suggs with the 4th pick. Now, again, Kyle Lowry is going to be out regardless. Listen, they made a bad decision not trading him last year. They could have got something, I think, maybe a bit better. For some reason, they allowed him to stay around, all to leave anyway. I don't really understand that. But, I think Ben's out of here. Would it surprise me if it's this week? No. In fact, I hope it is. I want it done already. Get him out of here.
Yes, that's where I'm with you. I don't hate Ben Simmons personally. I'm just done. I'm over. I want to move on. And I've said before, for the Sixers and Rich Paul to have conversations, Jeff, if it's like a relationship. If you're thinking about the divorce, if you're thinking about moving on, you might as well just get it over with.
I agree. That's really a great analogy. I will also say, and I've been someone that has pushed this out for months and years as well. They have to make good selections in the second round and in the late first round if they make these picks. They need to stop devaluing draft picks because, again, if they have them, they need to build their bench through this. They do not have a good bench. It's that simple. I know they have a couple guys, but it's likely some of these guys will not be here anymore. They need to go out and really shore up the bench. I have said on record multiple times, this is a very deep second round. I think there's a lot of really good players that can come in and contribute right away. They need to make picks, and if they do, whether it's at 50 or wherever, they need to hit because they don't have that many. They need to make them count.
For more on the NBA draft, as well as sports betting analysis, football, everything, the man, the myth, the legend, he is Jeff Nadu, joins us every Tuesday here on the Sports Bash. Jeff, before I let you go, Tell us about the latest edition of the Sit Down on Mafia History podcast.
I do that as well. Yes. If you like the mob, you like Mafia history, you like Goodfellas, Donnie Brasco, John Gotti, whatever you like, we talk about it on the Sit Down. It's the most up-and-coming podcast you're going to hear about very soon. Go check it out. We have an episode tomorrow on Paul Castellano. A lot of people wonder, how did that hit go down? John Gotti takes over. We set the record straight. We talk a lot about Paul Castellano. So check that out tomorrow. Wherever you get your podcast, The Sit Down, a Mafia History podcast.
Yeah, the Jeff Nadu Passion Project.
That's correct.
Jeff, always appreciate you jumping on. Always enjoy the conversation with my friend.
Love talking to you. Thanks, Josh. See you, buddy.
Josh Hennig filling in for Mike Gill here on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. Sports Bash being brought to you by Matt Black Kia. And Matt Black Kia, they will get you approved today. Matt Black Kia on the Black Horse Pike, Egg Harbor Township. Visit them online at mattblackkia.com. We'll get back to you guys over listening out there. Text board is open, 609-403-0973. Also get a hold of the text board through the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. It's powered by First Bank of Sea Isle City. Again, the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. You can message the show, get involved in the conversation, and we are also live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Just follow at 97.3 ESPN. Still to come on the Sports Bash, we'll be talking more Eagles and NFL with Andrew DiCecco on football at 4. Also, 5:20. Bucks County Courier Times sports columnist Tom Moore will cover all the topics, the Phillies, the Eagles, the Sixers. Tom Moore covers it all. He'll join us at 5:20 tonight. I'm Josh Hennig, filling for Mike Gill on the Sports Bash here on 97.3 ESPN FM.
Turn it on. Leave it on. The Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN.
Always wanted a Jersey Shore mansion? With a $186 million Powerball jackpot win, you could buy the shore home of your dreams. Plus one for everyone in your family. It's just that many millions. Anything can happen in Jersey.
On some models excludes Corvette with GM financing, excludes prior sales. See dealer for details.
By now, most people know that nobody beats a Bennett Chevrolet deal. Because when you buy a new Chevy from Bennett, you pay the same as any GM supplier employee pays. That's right, not 1 cent more. Plus, Bennett gives you all the rebates that can add up to 25% off MSRP. That's up to 25% off. And of course, Bennett Chevy has 0% financing available. Think about all the ways you save at Bennett Chevrolet. Plus, right now, we want your trade. So we're paying a minimum $7,000 for any clunker. You heard right, a minimum $7,000 towards any pre-owned in stock. Nobody pays more than Bennett. You can imagine how much more we'll pay for a good trade. And there's more. You'll never feel any sales pressure and never waste time with stressful negotiating because our non-commissioned sales staff is paid on your satisfaction, not how much you spend. Nobody beats Bennett Chevrolet, and we mean nobody. Find new roads at Bennett Chevy, Egg Harbor Township, and BennettChevy.com.
You can watch the Sports Bash live now on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Search 97.3 ESPN or visit our website, 97.3ESPN.com.
Josh Hennig here on the Sports Bash. 3:26 Tuesday afternoon, hanging out with you. 97.3 ESPN FM, 97.3 ESPN mobile app, powered by First Bank Seattle City. We are live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Sports Bash this hour being brought to you by Indeed. With Indeed Instant Match, just sponsor a post and immediately receive a short list of quality candidates whose resumes on Indeed match your job description. Visit Indeed.com/credit for more details. That's Indeed.com/credit. We have messages coming in from all the different platforms. You can reach us in many ways. 97.3 ESPN mobile app. You can shoot a message right to us. Get a hold of the show. Also, the text board is open, 609-403-0973 to get on the conversation. And we are live on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter. You can see me, Josh Hennig, live in the Matt Black Kia studios, as well as guests like Frank Klose and Jeff Nadu, who's wearing an Eagles shirt. I wish I had an Eagles shirt that nice. Just saying. Man, I feel like Jeff always has the swag on when he comes on the stream as well. But we got a lot of messages to get to. A lot of you guys have had comments throughout the show. I'm going to get to all of you guys this segment here on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. I want to remind you still to come football at 4 with Andrew DiCecco. We'll dig deeper into the Eagles as they are back at training camp for day one. Also, Bucks County Courier Times sports columnist Tom Moore will join the show coming up at 5:20 tonight to get more into the Phillies, Sixers, and Eagles. We know that there's a lot of speculation that Ben Simmons could potentially be traded this week. We'll see if that actually happens. We also know that the Phillies are making calls. You know, maybe they're not going to get a guy like Craig Kimbrell, but they might be able to get a Richard Rodriguez and some others. So there's a lot of things to consider. By the way, Phillies made a couple transactions today in terms of roster. J.D. Hammer has been activated from the COVID-19 list. He will rejoin the Phillies bullpen, it looks like tonight. The Phillies have also called up Mickey Moniak. So they optioned Mickey Moniak, AAA Valley. So Hammer is activated. Moniak is demoted. I'm just going to double check if there's any other moves the Phillies have made aside from those two. Those are the two I've seen. Yep, that's the main move. So the move is Hammer in, Moniak out, and then your lineup tonight, Segura, Realmuto, Harper, McCutchen, Hoskins, Gregorius, Torres, Herrera, Moore. I don't hate that lineup. I don't love it either. I mean, I like Realmuto in the 2 slot way better than Hoskins, that's for sure. I think where Hoskins is right now is a nice spot. Personally, I would consider putting Torres in the 2 spot, but that would just be me. I would keep Herrera right where he is. And the rest of the lineup I'm fine with. And, of course, McCutchen is your cleanup hitter for the Phillies. Get to some of you guys' thoughts and comments. Text board is open as always, 609-403-0973. Reach out to the show through the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. It is free thanks to First Bank of Seattle City, and we are live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. A couple of messages coming in. Someone messages in says, we were talking about Deshaun Watson with Jeff Nadu a little bit earlier. Says, yeah, O.J. Simpson was allegedly committed murder. Please, we shouldn't want any part of Deshaun Watson. Yeah, you listen, I tend to lean toward more that side of the conversation. Tom for the Villas talking about yesterday. Someone messaged in earlier in the show about it's just not a good look. It doesn't matter if he is only being accused. You know, normal average people don't get accused of dirty, nasty things like this. Okay. The average person is not going to be accused of 22 separate women saying that you did something disgusting and potentially maybe 10 criminal charges. Okay. At some point, it's just a bad look. All right. It doesn't matter if he's just accused. Do you want that kind of cloud hanging over your head if you're the Eagles, and I say no. That's my opinion, okay? Listen, and this is not what I'm saying is going to happen. But I think it's very, very likely that what we're going to see is sooner than later, the league is going to come down with some sort of suspension or some sort of commissioner's exemption list or something that will take him out of Texans camp, take him out of trade conversations, and put the whole situation on the back burner. And that whenever the legal stuff is figured out eventually, because as Jeff Nader did mention, Deshaun Watson plans on fighting all these charges. Now, it doesn't mean he's innocent. It doesn't mean he's guilty. It just means that nothing is going to be resolved anytime soon. And to me, I just don't want that fiasco with my football team or any football team. And as I said earlier, and I said this yesterday, with the NFL's history of being inconsistent in dealing out punishment, I just don't have an interest in potentially trading away things, and then Roger Goodell wakes up on the wrong side of the bed one day and decides today is the day I'm going to suspend him or I'm going to put him on the commissioner's list. The NFL has no precedent, no consistency in making sure that anything happens that's logical. The league goes from day to day deciding what punishment, what judgment they feel like putting out there. This is not the NBA where there's a specific precedent for certain things, or baseball, there's a specific precedent for certain things. The NFL, case by case, makes these decisions. And it's ridiculous. So how am I supposed to rely that if I trade all these assets, I'm getting what I traded for? I can't promise you that. And by the way, if Deshaun Watson's lawyer says that criminal charges are coming down, then am I supposed to just ignore that? Am I supposed to just pretend like that didn't happen? Am I supposed to just pretend like that conversation isn't being had? And listen, you heard Jeff Mosher say it yesterday. You heard Jeff Nadu say it today here on 97.3 ESPN. The Eagles are doing their due diligence. They're not going to acquire a guy who could potentially have legal issues off the field and not be available to play, and then give up a bunch of draft picks and players. It's completely irrational, and it's not happening. I think the window for Deshaun Watson to be traded has passed. My personal opinion. My personal opinion is that this team just completely mishandled it, the Texans. And when they had a chance to trade him, they wouldn't trade him. And now they're stuck with his problem. They could have made him somebody else's problem months ago before any of these charges came out. But Texans ownership is a dumpster fire, okay? Cal McNair's son is completely mismanaged the franchise since he took over. And Nick Caserio is more and more looking like a stubborn fool. They could turn to Watson and say, look, man, you got all these legal problems. You should probably just go work out at home. But instead, they're out there saying, well, if you don't show up, we're going to fine you $50,000 every day. Okay, so you want him in your building? And by the way, Houston is the same city that has had to deal with people being accused of some pretty serious crimes. Okay, it was just a couple years ago that a Roberto Ozuna was traded to Houston from the Blue Jays after he served a suspension for domestic violence. That's something he was criminally charged with. All right. And the Astros decided to acquire him anyway. And it became a huge point of contention among Astros fans, baseball fans in that locker room. And it wasn't accepted very well. It was one of those things where it was a very awkward situation. So if you're the Texans and you already are in a city that lived through a guy going through that situation. Now, Ozuna's not even playing in baseball right now. He played for the Astros for a couple of years. He helped them do some things, but now he's not even playing in baseball this year. Read into that whatever you will. The guy's 26 years old, pitcher, not playing baseball in the major leagues. And you would think the Texans would be like, we saw what happened with the Astros and with Ozuna and that situation. Maybe we want to avoid that problem. No, the Texans decided to go out there and be idiots. A couple more messages coming in. James Gatling chimes in. James, a loyal listener, viewer of the show, says about the Phillies, talking about the Phillies a little bit earlier. What about Michael Pineda from the Twins, Kyle Gibson from the Rangers, or Kennedy from the Rangers? James, I prefer Gibson over Pineda. Pineda's too inconsistent for me. I think that it's not a coincidence that he has had some of the inconsistencies. He's had a lot of injury issues. You can't rely on him 100%. I don't know if Pineda is still the same pitcher after the injuries. This year, only 64 strikeouts and 72 innings. That's not the Michael Pineda of old. Michael Pineda, when he went for the Mariners to the Yankees, he was an all-star. He had his first set of injuries. He was still a guy who was getting people out with regularity. He was still a guy with amazing stuff. It was just back in 2016, he had 207 strikeouts, 175 innings. That's incredible. But they said more injuries since then. He's not the same pitcher he used to be. I would much rather Kyle Gibson, because Kyle Gibson, I don't have any injury questions. I don't have any consistency questions. Kyle Gibson has showed me this year that he has righted the ship. He has found his way back to what he was a few years ago. He's no longer damaged goods. He's no longer a guy who's having to find his way. He has really cut down the home runs. Remember, that was a problem that got him ran out of Minnesota in the first place, was that he just was giving up too many home runs year after year. This year, playing for the Rangers, by the way, in a hitter-friendly ballpark, he's only given up 9 home runs. He only gave up 12 last year as well. Now, 9 in 19 games is a pretty nice number to me. It was just a few years ago, he gave up 24, 23, and 23 while starting 29, 32, and 29 games. So he's gotten the home run issue under control. He's gotten the ERA back down. He's not a great strikeout pitcher, but you never expected him to be a strikeout pitcher. He was never a strikeout pitcher per se, while Pineda was. So I've always been a little concerned about Pineda and his long-term viability. But if you want to give me Gibson and Kennedy in a trade, I can work with that. I can deal with those guys. I don't love Ian Kennedy as a closer, but I think he's serviceable and he provides some valuable depth to this bullpen that genuinely needs more. And if you work out of the deadline with Gibson and or Kennedy and or Richard Rodriguez and some combination of those 3 guys, I'm good with that. Ian Kennedy's got 15 saves on the year. A couple of years ago, he had 30 saves. So he has successfully converted from a starting pitcher to a bullpen pitcher and shown himself to be effective. And I can work with that. If you have shown me multiple years, like Kennedy has, that you are a viable bullpen pitcher and I don't have to give up a lot to get you, I can work with that. The only concern you have is there's another team calling the Rangers about Ian Kennedy, and that's the Los Angeles Dodgers. The Dodgers can offer more for him than the Phillies prospectively. And Ian Kennedy is going to be a free agent. How much are you willing to give up for a guy who's going to be a free agent next year? This is a Starling Marte conversation. Can you get Starling Marte? Yes. Are the Marlins going to bring down their trade price in order for you to get him? That's another thing. I don't know. I can't tell you 100% what exactly Marte or Kennedy are going to demand on the market, because When other teams like the Yankees are calling about Marte and the Dodgers are calling about the Rangers, both of those teams can theoretically outbid you for two guys who are going to be free agent. Now, do I think the Phillies could get Marte and Kennedy? Yes. But it depends on what the Yankees and the Dodgers do. Because if the Yankees go and get Buxton from the Twins, that makes the Phillies one of the only suitors left for Marte. If the Dodgers go out and get, let's say, Kimbrel from the Cubs or Reyes from the Cardinals, that leaves the Phillies one of the only suitors for Kennedy. So this is where being patient and the market play out actually can work in your favor when it comes to Kennedy and when it comes to Marte. But me, being the impatient person I am, I want a deal done yesterday. So if you were asking me about all the pitchers available in terms of Pineda, Gibson, and Kennedy, here's how I'd rank it. I would say that Kennedy would be my number one of those three guys because you desperately need bullpen help. And I think Kennedy is a stabilizer. I would love to get Gibson. I prefer him over Pineda. And I think there's a way to get Gibson and Kennedy from the Rangers. I would love that. How likely is it? I don't know, because there's a lot of teams who are going to call about Kennedy because he is an all-star this year. He is a guy that the Rangers are making available. They're taking trade calls. And I think there's a possibility that Gibson might even be traded before Kennedy does. Josh Hennig here on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN, filling in for Mike Gill. Let's get one more message in here before we hit the break. Of course, you can text in 609-403-0973 or go to the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. It's free. Thanks to First Bank Seattle City. Message into the show. And we're also live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter where you can join the conversation. Message here says, saw some of the talking heads on First Take talking about who will win the NFC East. Eagles are not even mentioned. The so-called experts think they stink, obviously, with no regard for last year's injuries and this offseason upgrades. What is your take? Well, my take is that First Take is a show that is created to drive people to want to watch the show and talk about the show. I don't always believe half what those guys say on television. I think that shows like First Take and Undisputed, when it comes to the main characters or role players, such as Max Kellerman, Stephen A. Smith, or on Undisputed like Skip Bayless and Shannon Sharp, I don't know how much what they say they really believe because they're playing roles and some way characters on television. So anything I said on all those shows, I can't take 100% seriously. Now, my opinion on specifically your point about the NFC East, everyone's overlooking the Eagles. Anybody who doesn't actually study this team is overlooking them. As you mentioned, the injuries last year, the play of Carson Wentz, the additions of Anthony Harris and Steven Nelson and Eric Wilson, they are huge parts of the dynamic that will make this team better this year. Devonta Smith is a serious upgrade for the wide receiver core. If the offensive line is healthy, to me, I agree with Nadu. This is a 7-8 win team at worst. Are they going to win the division? I don't know about that. But there's more tangible things I can latch onto with them than, let's say, the Giants. I still don't believe in the Giants' offensive line. I don't think they've sufficiently replaced Tomlinson on the D-line. I think that Saquon Barkley, if he's healthy, is going to change that offense drastically. In addition to Kenny Galladay is a huge deal. But is Daniel Jones good enough and is going to evolve enough to make them good enough to be more than just a what if in the division? I think the Eagles, their situation is more dependent on health than it is what ifs. Whereas the Giants, it's a lot more what ifs than anything else. So if the Eagles are healthy, to me, this is a 7-8 win team at minimum. I'm not promising to win the division. I think that comes down to the Cowboys and Washington, regrettably. And I think the Cowboys are going to be arguably one of the best offenses in the NFL this year, but I don't know how good their defense is going to be. Washington has an elite defense, but I don't know how good their offense is going to be because Ryan Fitzpatrick and Taylor Heineke are competing for the starting job down in Washington. So the NFC East is not a sure thing for any team. So I'm with you, Texter. I do think that people are overlooking the Eagles, and they're downplaying them because if you don't actually pay attention to the games and all you do is look at box scores, you're going to have opinions about things that are pretty wrong. All right, we're going to hit some more messages coming up on the other side. Josh Hennig, filling for Mike Gill. Keep them coming. 609-403-0973 is the text board, or you can jump on the 973 ESPN mobile app. Send us a message. The mobile app is free thanks to First Bank of Seattle City. And we are live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Follow 973 ESPN on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Of course, you can catch us also at 973ESPN.com for all your Phillies, Sixers, Eagles, Flyers coverage, as well as high school sports in South Jersey. I'm Josh Hennig, filling in for Mike Gill. 3:46 on a Tuesday here on The Bash.
There's never an off season for the NFL. It's football at 4 every day at 4 p.m. on the Sports Bash with Mike Gill on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.
If you're ready to get back to work or are just thinking of changing careers, 97.3 ESPN FM's virtual job fair is the place to start. Just go to the 97.3 ESPN app and tap on Job Fair. You'll find exciting opportunities from a variety of local businesses, including
Amco Total Car Care, Black Horse Pike, Egg Harbor Township.
Release Boat Works in Egg Harbor.
Maurice Piers in Wildwood.
Take the first step to a brighter future by visiting the virtual job fair on the 97.3 ESPN app.
Are you a Phillies sports fanatic? Do you love to travel and cheer on our hometown squad across the country? You need to check out Phillies Sports Trips. Join your fellow Phillies sports fans and book your trip with Phillies Sports Trips to cheer on the Birds this fall as they travel to Las Vegas to take on the Raiders. Travel packages can include chartered airfare, hotel, rides to and from the airport and stadium, game tickets, tailgate parties, entertainment, and more. Check out all the great Vegas travel packages Phillies Sports Trips offers. Visit phillysportstrips.com.
Now, back to the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN.
Josh Hennig here, back on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN FM, the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. As always, we're live on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter. So to come on the show, Football at 4, Andrew DiCecco, Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. sports columnist for the Bucks County Courier-Times, Tom Moore, at 5:20. Talk more Eagles, Phillies, and Sixers in the 5 o'clock hour. But, of course, right now we're getting to you guys' thoughts and comments. You have a plethora of ways to get a hold of the show. 609-403-0973 is the text board if you prefer texting into the show, or you can shoot a message to us through the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. It's free, thanks to First Bank of Seattle City. And as always, we are live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, where you can join the conversation as well and watch the shows if you want on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. A couple more messages have come in. Let's get to them right now. Jay and EHT says, pass on Watson. We love winning, but we love women and survivors of abuse more. That's Jay and EHT. Yeah, Jay, I don't think it's a good look for any team to trade for Watson right now. And even if he's not accused of 22 counts, civil cases, and potentially 10 criminal counts, what if he's only accused of 1 criminal account or 1 civil case? Doesn't 1 necessitate some sort of concern? Now you have potentially what could be 24, 25 different women accusing him of all similar things. Isn't that in and of itself something to be concerned about? So, listen, I'm passing on Watson too until I know more information. I understand it's innocent until proven guilty, but the NFL has a history of suspending guys who never went to jail. What makes Deshaun Watson any different? Another message coming in says the Broncos have been seriously interested in Watson. Watson made it known the feelings were mutual, part of the reason why the Broncos stayed on the Rodgers situation. But now Rodgers' deal is dead. Broncos made a statement that unless changes, all investigations complete with Watson, they will not entertain making a move for him specifically because they do not want to give up those assets. Well, that's what I've been saying all along, Texter. No team can give up the asset it takes to get Deshaun Watson if he's going to be suspended or he's going to jail or he's going to continue dealing with these legal problems. No team in their right mind is going to trade for him. And if they do, I question their sanity. And what makes it worse, though, is that the Nationals insisted he show up for camp or he was going to be fined $50,000 a day. I mean, if I am the Texans, I would not have required McKibb. I said, hey, man, stay home. Take you and your legal issues elsewhere. Now, here's the thing, Dexter. I have to disagree with you. I don't think the Broncos deal for Rodgers is dead. I think it just might not happen until next year. Because the deal with the Packers and the Rodgers looks like right now that Rodgers will play this year for the Packers. And then next year, they will move on. Okay? The idea is Rodgers can leave after this year. So the Broncos could make a deal with the Packers and acquire Rodgers this offseason. Upcoming. So, yeah, the deal can't happen now because Rodgers can play with the Packers. Him and Devontae Adams have their last dance, blah, blah, blah in Green Bay. But Aaron Rodgers could still be a Denver Bronco for the 2022 season. That's not beyond possibility. And I think if I'm the Broncos, I'd much rather stick my eggs in that basket than hope Deshaun Watson gets acquitted anytime soon. Again, that's me. Because I'm concerned about optics. I'm concerned about not putting my organization in a position where I have to compromise who I am just to satisfy, I don't know what. What exactly are we satisfied with Deshaun Watson? Is he a talented player? Yes. If all things being equal, he had no legal issues, is he a top 10 quarterback in the NFL? Yes. Does he change a franchise ultimately? Yes. But you cannot, in good faith and logically, acquire a guy who has 22 civil cases against him and potentially, according to his lawyer, Rusty Hardin, 10 criminal complaints coming against him. I don't care if he's going to fight it or not. It's just a bad look. All right, we'll get more into football coming next. Football for Andrew DiCecco next on the Sports Bash. Josh Hennig, for Mike Gill, 97.3 ESPN.
Hey, it's Mike Gill from the Sports Badge. If you're an advertising salesperson, how would you like to sell my show, the Sports Bash, here at 97.3 ESPN and Town Square Media? We're hiring new advertising salespeople to sell the Sports Bash, the #1 sports talk show in all of South Jersey at the #1 media company in South Jersey. Selling the Sports Bash is the job that will take you as far as you want to go. An excellent compensation package awaits you, as does a creative and fun working environment. So join the team on the Sports Bash and Town Square Media. It's truly the most advanced media company in all of South Jersey. Start or build upon your sales career by becoming a member of our team here at 97.3 ESPN and Town Square Media. If you're interested, apply at townsquaremedia.com. Click on careers. Town Square Media is an equal opportunity employer.
South Jersey's home of the Sports Bash with Mike Gill.
Well, something to think about, for sure.
WENJ HD Millville, Atlantic City. A Town Square media station serving all of South Jersey. This is 97.3 ESPN. 97.3 ESPN presents the Sports Bash with Mike Gill. It's time for Football at 4 with 97.3 ESPN.com's Andrew DiCecco.
My first allegiance is what will be best for the Philadelphia Eagles and our fans for the next 3, 4, 5 years.
Powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Now, live from inside the Matt Black Kia Studios. It's Football at 4.
Football at 4 back in your life here on 97.3 ESPN FM. Andrew DiCecco joins us right now to talk more about the Eagles as they reported to camp today. And you can check out Andrew DiCecco and Jeff Mosher's full Eagles training camp preview, a 12-part series right now over at InsideTheBirds.com. Who will make the cut? That's our latest edition on the website. Andrew joins us each and every Tuesday and Friday here on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN as the Eagles are officially in the building. Andrew, how you doing today?
Hey, Josh, doing pretty good. How about yourself?
Doing well, and it's even we don't have games yet, it's good to see people walking in the building, getting ready for practicing, the whole 9 yards. It's just great to see. Before we get anything specific, I want to ask you, what has stood out to you the most as you have prepared for this Eagles season? Is there a storyline? Is there a player? Is there something that has stood out to you the most?
The main storyline that I have going, that I kind of took away going into training camp is Jordan Latimer's on. Interesting to see that many, including myself, perceive the Eagles to be in a rebuilding stage, yet they've added a lot of veteran pieces. Granted, some of them are one-year Band-Aids, but they've added a lot of veterans nonetheless to sort of be competitive, because I do feel that they believe that the NFC East is very. See how they assembled the roster, so I'm interested to see how everything sort of comes together in the coming weeks.
Now, one of the guys who did report today, he's been practicing in the building, according to reports, for 2 weeks, is Zach Ertz. And, Andrew, I chalk it up to Zach Ertz is just not a diva prima donna. He's never going to be a guy who's going to try to be a distraction or a problem for the team. So, to me, him showing up is less about whether he plays this year for the Eagles or not, but just being just a responsible professional football player.
Right, and when I was asked that before on the show, I just didn't see him being the kind of player that's going to hold out and cause a distraction. That's just not in his DNA. That's not what Dak has been about since he's been a Philadelphia Eagle. I thought he would show up and be a good soldier, and you know what? Maybe things will pan out and he can go elsewhere. But you know what? I think if it goes the other way, I think just as easily he would be a good teammate and play whatever role they need him to play, quite frankly. And I still think that he has a number of good years left in the tank. Last year's probably an outlier. And, we'll see how things go. I mean, he could also be one of those players that sort of dangled there at the end of the summer when teams are looking to add a weapon and they call the Eagles, see where they're at with Zach Ertz, or maybe the Eagles need depth in other areas and they're willing to explore that because they also have Richard Rodgers there. Let's not forget. So they have some options, but it's not surprising to me that Zach reported.
Do you think this team is better if they have Zach Ertz and Goddard in the 12 personnel, or if they are in 11 personnel with one tight end and 3 wide receivers?
Well, I still think that having the 2 tight end set through the Philadelphia Eagles, Zach Ertz and Dallas Goedert are top 10 tight ends in the NFL. The Eagles receiving corps has the potential to sort of take the next step as far as you have a lot of young players that I think are going to emerge this year in Travis Fulgham and Jalen Reagor and Devontae Smith, but I don't know if they're quite going to be able to contribute at the level that those 2 tight ends would be able to. Not yet. So I think if both of those guys represent Dallas Goedert and Zach Ertz, they represent different strengths and they have different skill sets that they bring to the table. So I think that they created a lot of different mismatches when you look at what they can do. Zach Ertz being the more prolific route runner, sure-handed guy, and Dallas Goedert being the more explosive of the 2, better run blocker, better after the catch, and more of a red zone presence. So I think that they have the best of both worlds with both guys.
Andrew DiCecco joining us here, Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast at DiCecco NFL on Twitter. Andrew, looking ahead also at the offense, obviously one of the big talking points going into camp is the wide receivers and Nick Sirianni, Kevin Petula, all these coaches who have experience with receivers. What do you think is going to be the final number, though, of receivers they keep on the roster? Do they go to traditional 5? Do you think they go 6? What do you think the number of receivers is going to be?
Well, as I was sort of doing the math and configuring trying to get inside their heads and the way that they think and utilize some of these guys, it was. I wanted to go 5, but I have a feeling they're going to keep 6 based on just their coaching pedigree. They have a lot of sort of wide receiver centric coaches with various backgrounds, and I think they're going to be able to get the most out of a player like a JJ Arcega-Whiteside. So I think that he might be able to stick this year. They might be able to use him as he was intended to be utilized, find a way to incorporate him in the red zone, and really work on some of the areas that really have not been developed throughout his couple seasons. I mean, he's not the only player that has not really developed under the Doug Peterson era. And I think that this coaching staff will be able to at least take away some of the positives, some of the skills that he can bring to the table and find a way to get him involved. Because outside of Travis Fulgham, they really don't have a reliable, big-bodied receiver. And I'm not saying J-Jaws is reliable, but I'm saying that they drafted him to be that red zone presence. And I think that knowing that, they'll be able to sort of work on some of the things that have been holding him back, so to speak.
Who is the receiver that could take the biggest jump this year?
Jalen Reagor. I think Jalen Reagor is going to be. I think this coaching staff they're going to be far more innovative. They're going to utilize him as Jalen Reagor was drafted to be, the player he was drafted to be. They're going to move him around, get him on the move, find ways to exploit secondaries and get him vertical, let him take the ball out of the backfield, and really just take advantage of his dynamic traits. And that's something that we never really saw last season because he was so misutilized, and some of that was Jalen's fault. Some of that was he didn't necessarily run the most proficient routes, the most precise routes, and his body language wasn't always the best. But I think now with the second year under his belt, every receiver progresses at a different rate, Not everyone's going to come out of the gate swinging like Justin Jefferson. So I think it's far too premature to write Jalen Reagor off. I think that this coaching staff is really going to work with him and sort of scheme to his strengths. And I think you're going to see him make the biggest leap.
In your projections for the roster over at InsideTheBirds.com, you have 4 running backs making the team at this point in time. And I want to know, with that being said, what do you think is going to be done with Miles Sanders this year? Because we know that Nick Sirianni, Shane Steichen, they both come from offenses that used running backs in different ways, in different setups, but they all have one thing in common. They had a lead back, and then they had secondary third back. So what do you think that means for Miles Sanders and the Eagles offense?
Well, I think there's certainly going to be roles, right? I mean, if you look at how the Colts utilize their running backs, I think he'll be utilized much like how they use Jonathan Taylor. I think he's going to be their early down runner, but I also think that they're going to try and limit his exposure because Miles struggled with injuries last year. I don't know if he can be a 3-down workhorse consistently, but they also have Kerryon Johnson there who can catch the football reliably and probably the best out of all the running backs on the roster. He's also a good pass protector. Jordan Howard's there as a bigger running back, and they have guys like Boston Scott and Kenneth Gainwell that can do they can be the change of pace guys, like a Naheem Hines was for them in Minneapolis. So they have a variety of players that can fill the various roles, and I think you're going to start to see them sort of lean on certain players in different packages rather than just sort of lean on one player like Miles Sanders to assume the bulk of the carries. Because I don't know that he's that type of player.
Let's flip it over to the defensive side because obviously there's some questions about that side of the ball. And I'm really curious about how this linebacker situation plays out because in your 53, you got 6 linebackers, but one of them is technically Jacoby Stevens, the guy who was a safety, who they're turning into a linebacker. Right. I'm assuming, Andrew, that you're going to see only like 2 linebackers on the field at most points in time. I don't assume they're going to have all 3 all the time just because of the way offenses are today. So who do you think the 2 top linebackers should be coming out of camp?
Well, I think it will be Eric Wilson and Alex Singleton. The Eagles still are – there's still an absence of talent there at the linebacker spot. I think by default those are the two strongest players at the position. I think they complement each other quite well. Eric Wilson having more of a higher pedigree as a pass coverage linebacker. They brought him in specifically for those traits. He has a skill set that sort of transitions quite well to the growing trend of today's NFL, and that he's very good sideline to sideline, can drop in coverage, cover the tight ends and running backs. And I think Alex Singleton is more of a well-rounded player who's tenacious against the run, close to the football, very aggressive, piles up those tackles, is always around the line of scrimmage. So I think they'll complement each other quite well. And then after that, it's sort of anyone's guess how that's going to shake out.
Could Davion Taylor be one of the biggest beneficiaries of having a more normal offseason and preseason games?
Could he? Sure. Do I think that he will? I still think he's about a year away. He was immensely raw when he was drafted. The athleticism is off the charts. Now it's transitioning and channeling that athleticism into becoming a more well-rounded pro player that they can rely on to step in game situations. Because last season he was more of a guy that had these raw abilities, but when you put him out there, they didn't have the confidence to put him out there because he was more like running around like a chicken without a head. In that he was just. You have to know you have to be able to read and react. You have to understand the scheme. It's more than just being athletic. It's more than just finding the football. You have to be able to do so many different things and know other players' responsibilities. And he was not at that level yet, and I still don't know that he will be this year. But I think that this coaching staff is going to sort of look at his athletic skill set and find ways to get him on the field rather than just say, well, he's raw. We'll wait till next year. I think they're going to find specific areas of the field to utilize him and certain packages. So I think he'll make a few more cameos than he did last season.
Now you have 6 linebackers currently on your 53 projected over at InsideTheBirds.com. The reason I find that interesting is because you also have 5 safeties, and I mentioned Jacoby Stevens, you're listing as a linebacker. That's what the Eagles are projecting him. So why that many guys out there? Do you feel like they're going to have, because you only have about 9 D linemen making this team, so it seems like you believe the Eagles are going to go heavy on the second and third layers of the defense on the depth chart.
Yeah, and again, this is a premature, obviously this is before training camp, so I kind of assess the roster as it's currently constituted, and right now you have a guy in Rodney McLeod who's coming off ACL surgery, plans to play week 1, but should he not be able to be available for week 1, you have to have a contingency plan there. They do have some guys in the back end in the safety spot that have NFL experience that can step in and play a game or two if need be, and Marcus Epps. They have a guy in Elijah Riley, who I think is a young player that's played corner and safety. He played some corner at Army as well and at the Shrine Bowl. So he has some versatility there. I think that he might be able to hold on as a fifth safety. And that's sort of just the way that I see it going. And I went a little lighter on the D-line because you have to remember the rookie, Melvin Williams, can play defensive end and he can play defensive tackle. Teron Jackson's a player that I like, but when you really get down to it, how many snaps are going to be available to him? And would it make more sense to go heavy elsewhere, which in my opinion it would, because the safety depth is far worse than in the trenches. And maybe I think Teron Jackson might be better served on the practice squad and sort of develop that way. I don't know that there's going to be teams vying for his services should he get cut. And I do like his NFL promise, but not this season. I think he still needs to develop in certain areas of his game. So I don't know that you can justify keeping him on and going later at safety knowing the situation of Rodney McLeod.
Andrew DiCecco here, Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Him and Jeff Mosher's full series ahead of training camp, 12-part series right now over at InsideTheBirds.com. Now that they brought in Steven Nelson, my attention goes from the outside corner to the inside. You mentioned that Riley can play both safety and corner. To me, this team becomes better immediately, not just because of Steven Nelson, but because Avonte Maddox will be projected to be the inside corner, and he's so much better to me as an inside corner. But I ask you, could Avonte Maddox also play safety in this defense?
I think so, and I think that that's the plan. I think that you're going to see him move around. I think he's best utilized, best deployed as a positionless type player. He's played pretty sound at safety when he's been put back there, and he's much more at home in the slot. You're right. His skill set does not lend himself to being a perimeter corner. He was miscast, and that was painfully evident early on that he was not cut out for that role. Very short arms, doesn't locate the football particularly well, struggled against bigger body receivers. So I think he's going to be able to utilize his short area quickness on the inside, and he is a smart player. That's one of his strengths. He has a high football acumen, and I think that they're going to be able to take advantage of that and to sort of move him around the secondary, and that's really what he's going to be best utilized at.
The Eagles only have 3 preseason games this year, so no more 4 preseason like in past years, Andrew. How do you think that will impact the final 53?
Well, I think the long shots are going to have an even more of an uphill battle to make the roster because there's going to be limited opportunities to really make an impact and catch the coach's eye. So I think that they're being deprived of that 4th game. They're the ones that benefit most out of that. And if they don't make the Eagles, well, you have more film out there on other teams to sort of evaluate you, and you can catch on somewhere else. Now it's going to be very difficult for some of those guys. So I think that they're going to have to go into the preseason really knowing, by and large, what they have on the roster and sort of only have a couple players that they want to get an extended look at. And other than that, I don't know how you can incorporate all the players on the roster right now in these games to be able to get an accurate assessment. So they're going to have to go into these games, really the first game of the preseason, having tentatively having an idea of what the roster is going to look like.
Andrew, one more before I let you go. Always appreciate the conversation here on Football at 4 here on 97.3 ESPN. What is something that you think is going to be the biggest difference from the Doug Peterson era to the Nick Sirianni era in Philadelphia as we get ready for preseason in just a couple weeks?
I think there's going to be a lot more energy. I think that's sort of going to be very apparent early on. I think it's going to radiate throughout the roster. I think you're going to see a lot of players that sort of emerge and you didn't know that they had these abilities, because I think they're going to be utilized to their strengths. And instead of being, like I said, being pigeonholed into certain roles, I think you're going to see them start to assess what they have and find a way to best utilize these players, play to their strengths. So I think you're going to see a lot more players involved. I think you're going to see a lot more rotation, and I think the team's going to be better for it in time. May not be right away, but I do think that this coaching staff has a vision, and I think it's going to be a promising one.
You can follow him on Twitter at DiCecco NFL. Check out his 12-part series with Jeff Mosher at InsideTheBirds.com. And Andrew joins the show every Tuesday and Friday, as we are the day of the Eagles reporting to campus today. They're supposed to be on the field tomorrow. So we finally have real football to talk about, Andrew. It feels great, does it not?
Always, man. So I'm always in football mode.
Great stuff, Andrew. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll talk to you Friday.
Yeah, man. Take care.
Josh Hennig here on the Sports Bash, filling in for Mike Gill here on 97.3 ESPN FM. Hanging out with you. We do have some Phillies breaking news. The Phillies have made a trade. That's the good news. The bad news is they found one of those pitchers who have a worse ERA than Zach Eflin. Remember I told you guys yesterday that the Phillies could go out and get 7 guys who all have better ERAs than Zach Eflin this year? Well, they decided to not go get one of those guys. So the Phillies are acquiring Tyler Anderson from the Pittsburgh Pirates in exchange for Christian Hernandez and Abraham Gutierrez. So 2 very low-level prospects that don't really hurt you at all, okay? And you get a pitcher who is somebody who is going to eat up innings for you. I saw the stat out there that Vince Velasquez has only gotten through 5 innings in half of his starts this year. Tyler Anderson has gotten through 5 innings in every of his 18 starts this year. Now, the problem, as I said, he has a 4.35 ERA. So you're getting a pitcher who can eat innings, and he's not going to get knocked out of games, but he's not a dominant pitcher. He's kind of like a Phil guy. He's kind of like a left-handed version of Joe Blanton at this point. This will be Anderson's 4th team in the last 4 years, by the way. He played for the Rockies in 2019, the Giants in 2020, and the Pirates this year. So he's bounced around a little bit. His time in Colorado was very rough around the edges. He had a solid year for the Giants last year, including a complete game in the 13 starts he has, or the 11 starts he had at 1 complete game. This year, he's pitched 103 innings and 18 starts, 86 strikeouts versus 25 walks. So he's a solid pitcher. I'm not crazy about the home runs. Allowed 16 home runs this year. So 16 home runs and 18 starts, not the greatest number in the world, but you're getting some depth, and the expectation is a possibility he could actually start on Thursday instead of Velasquez. So that's the latest on the Phillies move there. We'll get to more details on that coming up on the other side. How do you guys feel? Tyler Anderson is the new Phillies pitcher, and there's a projection he could start on Thursday for the Phils. Pirates have already pulled him off the field today, and he's supposed to be on his way to Philadelphia soon. So again, Tyler Anderson coming to the Phillies in exchange for 2 low-level prospects from the Pirates. What do you guys think? Text board is open, 609-403-0973. Jump on the 973 ESPN mobile app. It's free. Thanks First Bank of Sea Isle City. Send us a message. Tell us what you think. And we are also live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, where you can join us in the conversation. Get involved. We'll see what you guys have to say as well about the Eagles. The Phillies make a trade. Sixers, rumors of trades happening. All that and more coming up. Josh Hennig filling for Mike Gill on the Sports Bash here on 97.3 ESPN, the 4 o'clock hour, being brought to you by PropSwap, America's sports betting marketplace. Sell your sports bet, take your profit. Find out how at PropSwap.com or by downloading the PropSwap app today. Sponsors of the 4 o'clock hour here on the Sports Bash.
Turn it on. Leave it on. The Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN.
Always wanted a Jersey Shore mansion? With a $186 million Powerball jackpot win, you could buy the shore home of your dreams. Plus one for everyone in your family. It's just that many millions. Anything can happen in Jersey.
No matter the mileage, no matter the make, no matter what you owe, Matt Black Kia wants your vehicle today. Even if you don't want to buy a new car from us, we need to replenish our inventory, so we need your vehicle, no matter the situation. Stuck in a loan or lease, Matt Black Kia wants to get you released. Get cash for your car today, even if you don't buy a car from us. However, if you are looking for a new ride, take advantage of New Jersey Charge Up Incentive Program. Get 10 grand off on all brand new 2020 Niro EV, all 2021 Kia Souls, $1,500 cash back, or pay 0 interest for 60 months on every Kia Sportage, Forte, and Stinger.
It's gotta be a Matt Black Kia.
Offers with approved Tier 1 or 2 credit through Kia Motors Finance. Not all will qualify. 0% based on 1667 per rule. Finance at the new low. Call 877-289-6670 or go to mattblackkianj.com for complete details. Expires 8/6/2021. Matt Black Kia, 6211 Black Horse Pike, Egg Harbor Township, and now on Route 37 in Toms River.
You can watch the Sports Bash live now on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Search 97.3 ESPN or visit our website, 97.3ESPN.com.
Josh Hennig back here on the Sports Bash, 97.3 ESPN FM. Yes, the Phillies have made a trade. They are acquiring Tyler Anderson from the Pirates in exchange for two lower-tier prospects, what is being described as Tier 2 prospects. Prospects that you don't expect to be starters at least be starters anytime soon in the big leagues. Those prospects being Christian Hernandez and Abraham Gutierrez. So 2 prospects going to Pittsburgh in exchange for Tyler Anderson. So Phillies are getting a pitcher who solid, not great. He's an upgrade probably in many ways over Spencer Howard and Matt Moore. And it looks like he could be taking the starting slot from Velasquez on Thursday. So Moore is still expected to pitch tonight. Wheeler tomorrow. And we could see Anderson in a Phillies uniform as soon as Thursday. So let me know what you guys think out there. 609-403-0973 is textable. We're also live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, where you can get involved in the conversation. Also, 973 ESPN mobile app. Send us a message through the app. Get involved in the conversation on the show. So a plethora of ways for you to get involved in the conversation here on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. Couple messages coming in. Dave chimes in and says, only 2 outings has Tyler Anderson allowed over 4 runs. Dave, I actually have to correct you on that. It is actually 3 starts this year. He allowed over 4 runs. He had a 4-run allowed. He had 6 and he had 9. He allowed 9 versus the Braves back on May 21st. He allowed 6 versus the Nationals back on June 15th. And he's allowed 4 back on May 15th. So if you specifically look at what he has done since the beginning of June, though, if you want to say that recently he has been a lot better, you can go down that road. In the 8 starts, the last 8 starts he's had, he has a 4 ERA. He's probably pitched his best baseball as of late in the last 8 starts. He's only allowed a couple runs in those 4 runs or more in those games, specifically the one versus the Nationals. If you take out that game specifically and you go with what he's done since that start versus the Nationals, he actually has a 3 ERA. So Anderson is a solid pitcher. I don't think he's a bad pitcher. I don't think he's a great pitcher. He's solid. And as long as this is the beginning of multiple moves for the Phillies, I'm okay with it, because this can be your Joe Blanton. Okay, this can be your depth guy that just go out there, get you innings, just go out there and just get the job done. You know what I mean? The idea being that you don't need a guy who's going to be the best pitcher in the world. You need a guy who can just get the job done. So, so it looks like right now, if we're to project out what exactly the starting rotation is going to look like. So it's going to be Matt Moore tonight, Zach Wheeler tomorrow. The expectation is Tyler Anderson on Thursday, Spencer Howard on Saturday. So that looks like what we're going to get from the Phillies. Again, Tyler Anderson, he's 31 years old, left-handed pitcher. He is a former first-round pick of the Colorado Rockies back in 2011. He's pitched for the Rockies, the Giants, and the Padres. This will be now his 4th team since the beginning of the 2019 season now. After his time in Colorado, he ended up with the Giants, Pittsburgh this year, and now traded to the Phillies. So, guy's been around the block a little bit. Somebody's going to give you innings. He's an innings eater. That's his big claim to fame. He has gone at least 5 innings in 18 starts this year. So, you're getting a guy who is going to eat up innings. He doesn't get knocked out of innings early. And it's going to help the team overall. I think that that's the big thing to take away from this. He is definitely an upgrade over guys like Spencer Howard and Vince Velasquez in terms of dependability department. You can rely on him to go out there and get you 5 innings each game. That is one thing we can assure you, that you're not going to have to see a guy who has to be pulled out of the game every 5 seconds. 18 starts, minimum 5 innings. That, to me, is huge. The biggest win of this deal, to me, is you're getting a guy who won't get knocked out early of games. You're not getting a guy who can be easily sent off the mound. So no more Spencer Howard going 3 innings or Velasquez 3 innings every time. You're actually getting a guy who can actually go out there and get you 8 innings. Is it going to be 8 amazing innings every game? No, obviously not. You got a 4.3 ERA on the year. You're not exactly lighting the world on fire. But you are a guy who's going to at least keep you in the game. And that's really what the Phillies need right now. They needed a back end of the rotation guy, and that's what he is. So now the question is, what do the Phillies do from here? So you got the one of the 2 starters I told you that you needed yesterday. I said it here on the Sports Bash yesterday. The Phillies need to walk out of this trade deadline with multiple pitchers. All right? So you got one. You got a back of the bullpen kind of guy. Great. And you didn't give up a lot to get him, which is even better. A guy who's going to eat you innings, left-handed pitcher, change up the rotation. But now you need more. I would say I would like to see them get another starting pitcher and a bullpen pitcher before the deadline. If they can get a Starling Marte, that'd be great. But to me, you need pitching desperately. Now, Joe Girardi is changing the narrative here, because Joe Girardi spoke before the deal for Anderson was finalized. So Girardi has not commented on Anderson starting yet. So we probably won't know from Girardi's mouth exactly the plan for Anderson yet. But again, the speculation is he would start Thursday because he was scratched from his start today, and you're not bumping out Zach Wheeler out of his turn of the rotation for Tyler Anderson. Okay. Just saying. So it looks like that's what we're dealing with, a pitcher who's eating innings, upgrade on the pitching staff. You didn't give up a lot to get him. What do you guys think? Text board is open, 609-403-0973. Also, the 973 ESPN mobile app. It's free thanks to First Bank of Seattle City. You can message us through the app as well. We are also live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Steven Ventnor says, I love it. All right, Steven Ventnor's on board. So my question is, you're telling me you made a trade with the Pirates and you couldn't get Richard Rodriguez in the same deal? I'm not trying to be mean, but you just traded with the Pirates. You could have walked out of this deal with Tyler Anderson and Richard Rodriguez. Instead, you only walked out of it with Anderson. So they either have their eye on another bullpen pitcher who they're going to acquire, or they're not getting a bullpen pitcher. Maybe they think that if they get enough starting pitching, they can bump some of these guys to the bullpen. I'm just theorizing out loud. I don't know exactly what the deal is, but I do find it interesting. They traded with the Pirates and they didn't get Rodriguez with Anderson. They just got Anderson. I think that is something to keep an eye on moving forward. Does that mean anything in the grand scheme of things? I don't know, but I find it interesting. I don't know if it means anything long term, but I just find it interesting. It's something to keep an eye on moving forward. What was the reason why you went out and got only Anderson from the Pirates? I'm sure Dombrowski and the Phillies will speak on it at some point about exactly why. But as of right now, one pitcher at least is coming to Philadelphia, Tyler Anderson, the Pirates lefty, 31 years old. You can chime in your thoughts on the player, also on the Phillies. Is this enough? This Steven Ventnor says he loves the deal. All right, so are we giving this a thumbs up? Are okay? Are we hoping for more? I know I'm hoping for more. I'm certainly hoping for more from the Phillies, because if Tyler Anderson's your big move, I'm really concerned. So that's what's going on. That's the latest Phillies news. We'll be talking with Tom Moore about the Phillies as well, coming up at 5:20 tonight. Tom Moore, sports columnist for the Bucks County Courier-Times, covers the Phillies, Eagles, and Sixers all year long. So we'll get his thoughts on the situation as well. But for right now, the latest deal is Tyler Anderson is coming to Philadelphia, and there's expectation that he will be your starter on Thursday night, taking Vince Velasquez's slot in the rotation. Now, supposedly, Spencer Howard is supposed to pitch on Saturday, I believe. Let me double check this. So is it something where you take Velasquez out of the rotation and pair him with Howard now? Let's see here. Spencer Howard, according to Girardi, is expected to pitch on Saturday and start. So if you take Velasquez off for Thursday, and maybe you have Howard go for 3 innings, Velasquez go for 3 innings, and then go to the rest of the bullpen, maybe that's the way to go. And by the way, you're playing Pittsburgh this weekend. Yes, after the National Series is done, you fly to Pittsburgh for Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So, interesting. Just some things to keep an eye on and chew on as we get closer and closer to the deadline. Josh Hennig filling in for Mike Gill here on the Sports Bash with 97.3 ESPN FM, 97.3 ESPN mobile app. And we are live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. I'm going to grab more of your guys' thoughts and comments, your reactions next to the Phillies deal, and anything else on your guys' mind. Text 609-403-0973. You can message us through the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. It's free, thanks to First Bank of Seattle City. And we are live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Josh Hennig here on the Sports Bash 4 o'clock hour, being brought to you by PropSwap, America's sports betting marketplace. Sell your sports bet, take your profit, find out how at PropSwap.com or by downloading the PropSwap app today.
Turn it on. Leave it on. The Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN.
Always wanted a Jersey Shore mansion? With a $186 million Powerball jackpot win, you could buy the shore home of your dreams. Plus one for everyone in your family. It's just that many millions. Anything can happen in Jersey.
back to the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN.
Josh Hennig back here on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. As we mentioned a little bit earlier this hour, the Phillies have made a trade. Tyler Anderson coming to Philadelphia for the Pirates in exchange for what they're calling second tier or tier 2 prospects, Christian Hernandez and Abraham Gutierrez from the Pirates. So Phillies get another pitcher, which they needed desperately for the bullpen. So we're talking more Phillies, more Sixers, more Eagles throughout the show. Don't forget Tom Moore will join us coming up in the 5 o'clock hour here on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. Sports Bash being brought to you by Matt Blatt Nissan. The all-new Matt Blatt Nissan is now open on the Black Horse Pike, Egg Harbor Township, next to Home Depot. Visit them online at mattblattnissan.com. More of your guys' messages right now, your guys' reactions to the Phillies trade, the Eagles starting training camp today, Ben Simmons rumors, and more. Text board is open, 609-403-0973. You also can message the show through the 97.3 ESPN mobile app powered by First Bank of Seattle City. And we are live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Follow 97.3 ESPN on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter for all of your latest updates on the Phillies, Eagles, Sixers, and Flyers. And, of course, 97.3ESPN.com, the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. Got all the news right there on the app. A couple of messages to get to here. Allen in EHC says, night start. Let's get more if we're serious. Well, I think they're going to get more, Allen in EHT. I agree with you. It's a good start. You know, it's Tuesday. Friday is the deadline, 4 p.m. for the trades. So I'm going to assume because there's a lot of chatter out there, okay? The guys like John Heyman, Jim Salisbury, Ken Rosenthal, Jason Stark, Jeff Passan, all the baseball guys are saying, Alan EHT, that the Phillies are in on a lot of trade talks. So I'm going to go under the assumption that this is just the start. And Alan EHT, you're right. This is a good start. All right. Steven Ventnor follows up and says, I like the fact that Tyler Anderson is a lefty. The Phillies are definitely not done. I would say stick with Howard as a starter right now, and Vinny Velo can piggyback off of him. Yeah, that's what I was saying for Saturday. I think that maybe that's the way to go with Velasquez. You know, instead of becoming a bullpen game purely in the Spencer Howard starts, you start with Howard and then you get Velasquez on the back end of him. That way you're giving two completely different pitchers to a starting lineup. You know, no matter who it is, you go from Spencer Howard to Vince Velasquez. These are two completely different pitchers, and that's a beautiful way to kind of mix things up, salvage the rotation until you get somebody else in there. To me, that's the way to go. I think they still need more pitching after Tyler Anderson, but I think Steve and Ventnor's right. Anderson's a lefty. You can now have Velasquez piggyback with Howard on Saturday, and that gets you a little further than you were right now. I think that's the way to go for the Phillies. So we will keep an eye on the latest with baseball, but right now the main thing is Tyler Anderson going to Philadelphia in exchange for what they're referring to as tier 2 prospects, Abraham Gutierrez and Christian Hernandez. You can keep the messages coming at 609-403-0973. Also live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Just follow 97.3 ESPN. You can chime in, comment on the stream as well. Also, 97.3 ESPN mobile app. Send the message to us on there. Yes, the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. It's free thanks to First Bank of Seattle City. You can get involved in the conversation there as well. Another message came in. So we were talking about the linebacker situation a little bit earlier in the show. And both Danny Mack and James Gatling. Danny Mack asking, will the team bring in a veteran linebacker? And James Gatling asking, what about Jordan Hicks? So the working assumption out there is that Jordan Hicks is out of the Cardinals' plans short and long term. He's kind of just on the roster right now, but considering the trades that the Cardinals The moves Cardinals made this offseason between the draft, offseason acquisitions, and more, the idea is that Jordan Hicks on the outside looking in. The working theory out there is that the Eagles could get Jordan Howard in exchange for Zach Ertz. Now, I can't confirm that that's going to happen, but at least that is, in theory, something they could do. I think it's not a bad idea. I think it's something that would make sense for both teams. Cardinals get a bona fide tight end target. Eagles get more depth at linebacker. The problem for Jordan Hicks is this. If you bring Jordan Hicks in, who doesn't make the roster? Okay? We know that Eric Wilson's making the team, and we know that Alex Singleton is making the team. So who after that gets eliminated? You just drafted Davion Taylor and Sean Bradley last year. Are you really going to dump 2 draft picks a year later so Jordan Hicks makes the roster? I don't think so. I think both those guys make the roster at least for this year. Then it comes down to TJ Edwards and Jacoby Stevens. Jacoby Stevens, guy you drafted this year, but you drafted him late rounds. You don't have to keep him. Or you could rationalize Stevens is a safety linebacker hybrid, and he's not really a linebacker, so you can keep him for special teams purposes, which leaves TJ Edwards out in the cold. And so then I ask, is TJ Edwards worth keeping over Jordan Hicks? That's kind of how I look at it. If you were to acquire Jordan Hicks, you got to make a decision between Hicks and Edwards. Hicks has an injury history. We all know that here in Philadelphia. He's older than TJ Edwards, but he's a better athlete. He's the better all-around linebacker. Edwards is a guy who is a little one-dimensional. He's not a great coverage linebacker, which is something that Jordan Hicks is much better at. So if you were to say, let's say, trade Zach Ertz for Jordan Hicks, you got to answer some questions about what exactly your plans are for the roster. Someone's got to not make the team. You can't keep everybody. So something to think about as well with the Eagles. I'm not against acquiring Jordan Hicks. I'm just saying in reasonable terms, what do you do if you acquire him? Who do you move on from? Who do you get rid of? So that's how I'm looking at it right now with the linebackers. I don't think the linebacker situation is as bad as some people may imply. I think that they could always use more talent at linebacker. But I think the Eric Wilson signing was very specific. I think the Wilson-Singleton pairing, like Andrew DiCecco said just a little bit ago, is probably going to be the way this team goes. It's probably going to be the way this team lines up moving forward. So that's how I'm looking at it. I'm looking at it as you have a guy that you know is going to go out there and do certain things. So let him go out there, let him do those things, and just play it by ear. There's no reason why you have to, jump and say how high, let's say, when it comes to linebacker. I think the linebacker situation is okay right now. Josh Hennig, filling in for Mike Gill here on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. Don't forget the 4 o'clock hour being brought to you by PropSwap, America's sports betting marketplace. Sell your sports bet, take your profit. Find out how at PropSwap.com or by downloading the PropSwap app today. Still to come, Bucks County Courier-Times sports columnist Tom Moore will talk with us about the Phillies trade today, as well as the Eagles reporting for training camp, Sixers, a lot of rumors out there. Ben Simmons, Kyle Lowry, Sixers, Raptors, are they going to make a deal? Speculation that could be a deal this week. And, of course, you guys can chime in as well. Join the conversation here on the Sports Bash. I'm Josh Hennig. Be back with you next.
You have the choice, whether it's going out for dinner or ordering takeout at a local restaurant or buying that new outfit from a local boutique. Those choices
South Jersey's play-by-play home for the Eagles, Sixers, and Flyers.
He scored!
97.3 ESPN, WENJ, WENJ HD Millville, Atlantic City, a Town Square media station.
Five o'clock hour of the Sports Bash. Josh Hennig here, 97.3 ESPN FM, the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. We are live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. You can join the conversation. If you're watching on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, you're seeing I'm having a bit of trouble getting the microphone in front of my face. That was interesting. Oh, my goodness. Coming up in about 20 minutes from now, Tom Moore, sports columnist, longtime Sixers writer, now covers the Eagles, Phillies, and Sixers for the Bucks County Courier-Times sports columnist. We'll join us to talk about Phillies make a trade today. Tyler Anderson coming to Philadelphia. Eagles report the training camp. Zach Ertz among the players reporting the training camp. And, of course, tons of rumors about Ben Simmons and his future. This hour of the Sports Bash being brought to you by Indeed. With Indeed Instant Match, you just sponsor a post and immediately receive a short list of quality candidates whose resumes on Indeed match your job description. Visit Indeed.com/credit for more details. That's Indeed.com/credit. So let's get everybody updated. If you're just joining the show in the 5 o'clock hour or late this afternoon, we appreciate you guys joining the show. 97.3 ESPN FM, 97.3 ESPN mobile app, powered by First Bank of Seattle City. We're live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. So on the Phillies front, the latest is Tyler Anderson has been acquired by the Philadelphia Phillies in exchange for 2 Tier 2 prospects. So 2 guys who were not in the Phillies' long-term plans in terms of their organization. Also in the news today, so we'll get to Tyler Anderson in just a bit. Jake Fisher is reporting that talks between the Sixers and the Raptors are considered to be the most advanced of any conversations Philadelphia has had about Ben Simmons. Of course, this follows up on the report this week by Brian Windhorst of ESPN. The Sixers are expected to be in on the Kyle Lowry sweepstakes involving the sign-and-trade deal. Keith Pompey has reported that Lowry is looking for 3 years, $90 million contract. So that would be a contract that would line up with Ben Simmons' contract in terms of trade values. You know, 1-for-1, at least money-working situation. But obviously the Sixers would ask for more than just Kyle Lowry in a deal. There's speculation that the Sixers asked for the moon and the Raptors said no, and now they're kind of like working their way through the deal. There's speculation from Adrian Wojnarowski of ESPN that a Sixers deal could get done this week. So keep an eye on all of that moving forward with Ben Simmons, because where there's smoke, there's fire. As I always ask, when there's smoke, there's fire. I'm always wondering who started the smoke and who wants you to know there's a fire. So, like, where are these reports coming from? Because if you have multiple people reporting around the same information, Woj, Windhorst, Shams is tweeting that the Sixers have had calls from, 7 teams, basically. Shams reporting that the Sixers are one of the top suitors for Kyle Lowry. Jake Fisher of Bleacher Report. There's a lot of people reporting about the same things. So maybe some reality to this whole Sixers situation when it comes to Ben Simmons. I tend to agree with what Jeff Nadu said earlier in the show when he was joining the 3 o'clock hour. I tend to believe that this team just is going to be without Ben Simmons next year. I don't know exactly how it's going to happen. I can't promise you it's going to be Kyle Lowry, but I feel comfortable saying that I believe, and I've been believing, that in order for the Sixers and the Ben Simmons to better both of their situations, that they both have to advance. They also have to grow beyond each other. Now, the Jake Fisher story at Bleacher Report has a little more on the Sixers information that I wanted to get to a little bit here. And of course, you can chime in on all of this. Phillies trade for Tyler Anderson, who has gone 5 innings or more in 18 starts this year. So he's a quality pitcher. Eagles at training camp. Simmons for Lowry, maybe. Text board is open, 609-403-0973. As always, also you can message us so through the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. You can get it for free thanks to First Bank of Seattle City. And we are live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Here's a little more on the Jake Fisher report. Now, Jake Fisher says, Sixers brass have indeed maintained contact with Simmons and his representatives, most notably the meeting in Chicago weeks ago during the Combine, but not too dissimilar to off-seasons past. Philadelphia has thus been unable to collaborate with Ben Simmons on a summer player development plan, sources said. Now, Jake Fisher goes on to say, the overwhelming expectation around the NBA remains Philadelphia will trade Ben Simmons before the start of training camp. So this is where the fake message gets exposed. We were told when exit interviews that Ben Simmons and Doc Rivers had talked and they were working on a plan for him to train this offseason. And as part of the meeting between Simmons, Representative Rich Paul, and the Sixers was to establish that connection and make sure that plan gets followed through. That's what we were told. But now we're learning that this is another offseason where Ben Simmons is just out of sight, out of mind, doing his own thing. And I've said it before and I'll say it again. Ben Simmons will never evolve beyond what he is now into what he can be unless he's not in Philadelphia. He is too content here. He will never grow because he will not try to be better as long as he's in Philadelphia. And Philadelphia will never win a championship as long as Ben Simmons is acting this way. If Ben Simmons, as Jake Simler says, like he has in past off seasons, is not collaborating with the Sixers on a summer development plan as was previously told to us, then the Sixers need to be rid of him. He needs to be gone. He needs to be out of here. I have always said that there are two types of athletes. There are the athletes who love the game, and there are athletes who love what the game does for their bank account. There are the athletes who eat, sleep, drink, breathe their profession. They love the game. They're desperate to win. They're diehards. Giannis Antetokounmpo being one of those guys. Yes, Giannis has benefited from what the sport has given him, pulling him and his family out of poverty. But he still loves to train. He still loves the game. He's passionate. He's driven. Ben Simmons seems to love what the game does for him. Ben Simmons thinks he's good enough. Ben Simmons thinks he's arrived. Ben Simmons thinks that everything's A-okay as is. There is no potential for growth with him. So he needs to be gone. He needs to be done. I'm done with this. I'm done with this fiasco. I have zero interest in Ben Simmons being in a Sixers uniform. I don't hate Ben Simmons. I've never hated Ben Simmons. I am not a Ben Simmons hater. So I am not on here saying this because I just don't like Ben Simmons. I am on here saying this because if you want to win a championship, if Daryl Morey wants to finally get a team to the NBA Finals, and he almost got there with the Rockets with that Harden-Paul team, they got to Game 7, and they couldn't hit a shot from 3 at all. In that Game 7, they lost. If Doc Rivers wants to build his resume beyond just the Celtics coach who never did anything anywhere else, if Joel Embiid wants to stop having a crying session after every postseason because he can't get to the conference finals when he desperately wants to get there, if the Sixers want to get beyond who they are, Ben Simmons cannot be a part of that plan long term. And that's the bottom line. Because if Ben Simmons does not want to work with the Sixers, does not want to collaborate, does not want to develop, doesn't want to grow, then there's a reason why there's an overwhelming expectation around the league, as Jake Fisher reports, that the Sixers will trade Ben Simmons. That there's something to this whole Sixers are in hot pursuit and are top suitors for Kyle Lowry. There is something to all of this Simmons trade talks with the Raptors. There's something to Woj believing there's a possibility that a Ben Simmons deal gets done this week. There is something to all of this. This is not just smoke. This is real. And again, as I've said before, if you want to win a championship, you got to move on. Every championship era team of the last 40 years had to move on from somebody to start winning championships. The Pistons had to make the Adrian Dantley and Mark Aguirre deal. The Chicago Bulls had to, at first, move on from Charles Oakley and then later bring in Dennis Rodman. The Lakers had to move on from Nick Van Exel and Eddie Jones. The Detroit Pistons got Larry Brown to complement the acquisition of Rasheed Wallace. Every team's got to do something. The Lakers had to acquire Pau Gasol and Ron Artest, or Kobe would have never won those other 2 rings. Every championship team has to make moves that at the time look questionable or at the time make you scratch your head. But it's important to make those moves. Josh Hennig here on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. We'll talk more Sixers coming up with Tom Moore. Also want to remind all of you that the trade happened about an hour ago, actually. Tyler Anderson has been traded to the Phillies in exchange for what is considered 2 tier 2 prospects, Christian Hernandez and Abraham Gutierrez. So the Phillies didn't give up a lot to get Tyler Anderson. He is a guy who has gone 5 innings in 18 starts this year. So he's an innings eater. He's a guy who has only given up 4 or more runs 3 times his entire year. So he's shown the ability to be a solid, quality starting pitcher. You can always join the conversation. Text board is open, 609-403-0973. You can chime in on the show through the 973 ESPN mobile app, powered by First Bank of Seattle City. And we are live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Message coming in from Tom from Margate. Chimes in and says, Josh, I just got in my truck. Tell me what you think of the Phillies trading for the pitcher Dombrowski. Get us a pennant. Well, if this is the same Tom from Margate, I wouldn't put the hard liquor away yet, because Anderson only solves one of a couple problems. he obviously fills a specific void in the starting rotation. So now you can take Velasquez and or Spencer Howard out of the rotation long term. And you can either make them piggyback guys in terms of a start here and there, or you can put them both in the bullpen at some point. So, and don't forget, Zach Eflin is not coming back this week. So when he comes back, your rotation is going to look like Nola, Wheeler, Anderson, Eflin, and I assume it's Matt Moore and or a combination of Howard and Velasquez. So this move doesn't win you the pennant, but this is similar to when the Phillies acquired Joe Blanton. The idea being you needed some depth. You needed a guy who's going to get you innings, who's not going to tax the bullpen, who can give you quality starts when he goes on the mound. You're not worried you got to go to the bullpen after 2-3 innings because Velasquez or Howard are incapable of pitching consistently. I think that Tom and Margate, this is the first of a couple moves. I think this was the first move that had to be done. My question, though, still is, I'll ask Tom Moore, sports columnist from the Bucks County Courier-Times, next. You got Tyler Anderson, but you could have had Richard Rodriguez, too, in the same deal. Why not? We'll ask Tom Moore what he thinks coming up next on the Sports Bash. Josh Hennig filling for Mike Gill here on 97.3 ESPN FM, the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. It's free thanks to First Vegas, Seattle City. We are live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Just follow 97.3 ESPN on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter.
Turn it on. Leave it on. The Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN.
Always wanted a Jersey Shore mansion? With a $186 million Powerball jackpot win, you could buy the shore home of your dreams. Plus one for everyone in your family. It's just that many millions. Anything can happen in Jersey.
On some models excludes Corvette with GM financing, excludes prior sales. See dealer for details.
By now, most people know that nobody beats a Bennett Chevrolet deal. Because when you buy a new Chevy from Bennett, you pay the same as any GM supplier employee pays. That's right, not 1 cent more. Plus, Bennett gives you all the rebates that can add up to 25% off MSRP. That's up to 25% off. And of course, Bennett Chevy has 0% financing available. Think about all the ways you save at Bennett Chevrolet. Plus, right now, we want your trade. So we're paying a minimum $7,000 for any clunker. You heard right, a minimum $7,000 towards any pre-owned in stock. Nobody pays more than Bennett. You can imagine how much more we'll pay for a good trade. And there's more. You'll never feel any sales pressure and never waste time with stressful negotiating because our non-commissioned sales staff is paid on your satisfaction, not how much you spend. Nobody beats Bennett Chevrolet, and we mean nobody. Find new roads at Bennett Chevy, Egg Harbor Township, and BennettChevy.com.
Attention South Jersey business owners. If your biggest question is, how can I find more customers? Then Town Square can help. Go to mylocalcustomers.com for a free competitive analysis that will show you how the most successful businesses in South Jersey grow and how you can do it too. These strategies are simple, and we can show you how to apply them to your business. Be one of the first businesses to sign up, and you'll receive $500 in free advertising on this radio station. Visit mylocalcustomers.com. That's mylocalcustomers.com.
Live now on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Search 97.3 ESPN or visit our website, 97.3ESPN.com.
Josh Hennig back here on the Sports Bash, playing for Mike Gill here on a Tuesday, 5:22 here on 97.3 ESPN FM, the 97.3 ESPN mobile app, powered by First Bank in Seattle City. We are live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Joining us to cover all the topics we talked about today: Eagles at training camp, Sixers offseason, Phillies made a trade today. How about them apples? Tom Moore, sports columnist for the Bucks County Courier-Times, joins us right now on the phone here on 97.3 ESPN. Tom, how you doing today?
All right, Josh, how are you?
I'm doing well, and the Phillies have finally satisfied my trade itch. I've been saying for days, Tom, that the Flyers made more trades in a week than the Phillies and Sixers did in several months, and now we finally get a Phillies trade. They get a pitcher. Is it a good enough pitcher, Tom?
Well, here's the thing. I saw Jason Stark, the great Jason Stark from ESPN, tweeted out that Anderson's 18 starts, he's pitched at least 5 innings in all 18. His ERA is a little over 4. But, when you're trotting out Matt Moore and Velasquez and Spencer Howard and earlier Chase Anderson, you don't know what you're going to get. And a lot of times you might only get 3 or 4 innings from these guys. So, you're not going to get a difference maker here. But if you get a guy that can give you 5 innings and give up 2 runs and keep you in games and not burn your bullpen, and it cost you a couple of single-A prospects, I guess a catcher, and a young pitcher, that's the kind of move that you can make, which should help. I would assume, Dombrowski's going to probably get some relief help, whether they are able to get a center fielder or a position player. I'm not sure. It depends what they're willing to give up. As I said, these were young, high A prospects doing well at that level, but you got to go to AA and AAA and the majors. You're 3 steps from getting where you need to go. So, it's a risk that, if you're trying to win now and they're, I guess, 3.5 games back, and it looks like they're going to, I don't know about go all in, but they're going to be more buyers than sellers at this point. It makes sense, and it does help you, and it addresses one of your needs. You probably could use another starter, honestly, with, how poor all those other guys, have been, but this at least helps. And he was supposed to pitch, I think, today. So yes. I don't know when, I don't know if that means maybe he'll pitch tomorrow now or Thursday. I don't know how how the rotation will be shuffled around, with Eflin out too. That hurts, not having a guy who really has been your second best starter this year.
Yeah, I know the speculation out there among the baseball people is that Anderson would start Thursday because Wheeler's scheduled to start tomorrow. And Girardi confirmed today to the media that Spencer Howard would be good to go for Saturday. So maybe you piggyback Velasquez on the Howard for Saturday's game. But like you said, Anderson is a guy, he goes 5 innings or more every start, and he gives you some consistency. And he's also a left-hander. You know how Philly fans have been desperate for left-handed starters in Philadelphia after they were spoiled for so long with guys like Hamels and Cliff Lee years ago. Now you finally get 2 lefties in a rotation, although the one of them is Matt Moore.
Yeah, Matt Moore, I don't know that he's going to necessarily. He might end up being one of those piggyback guys, too. He's kept them in games, and ironically, their record is better in Matt Moore starts than Aaron Nola starts, which isn't necessarily a reflection of Matt Moore. Per se, it is maybe the fact that they've had some comeback wins, or they've had some win games where they've scored a lot of runs and outscored the other teams essentially. But yeah, maybe Anderson will pitch Thursday. The former Pirate, and he's on a 1-year deal. He's 31. He's been around. He's pitched for the Rockies, and he's been around. So he's a guy who has some experience. It's a kind of low risk. I won't say high reward, but it could be a decent reward. As I said, if he's made 18 starts, if he just keeps making starts and gives you 5 innings, 5 1/3, 5 2/3, 6 innings, that's a big upgrade and keeps you in games. That's a significant upgrade from Velasquez. Did his typical. He's figured it out. He's got it. And then his last 2 starts, he was horrendous. And Moore has been disappointing. Really, a lot of the guys Dombrowski has signed, Kinsler, have been really disappointing. Joyce have really not played very well this year. So he's got to address it. And they're going to have to pretty much win the division. You look at the numbers. Being a wild card, they have to catch the Padres, and they'd have to really go on a run. Really, it's win the NL East or bust, pretty much, unless something crazy happens.
Tom Moore joining us here on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN at Tom Moore Philly on Twitter. Covers all the Philly sports teams for Bucks County Courier-Times, sports columnist over there. Tom, I asked the question earlier in the show, could last night's game-winning home run by McCutchen be the thing that propels this team out of their mediocrity? They started the month 10-4, then they lost both games to the Yankees. They split the series with the Braves. Last night was looking pretty tedious, and then McCutchen gets that home run. Could that win last night be the thing that turns this team around?
I mean, you'd like to think so, but to me, they beat the Nationals. They beat a team that isn't very good, that's not going to the playoffs. If maybe they had done it against the Mets, or the Padres or the Brewers or, a playoff team, a good team, I would say maybe, because they've done this before. They've had moments, they've had stretches where they've played well. They've had some dramatic wins, extra inning wins, walk-off wins, and haven't really seemed to, build on it. So, as I said, while you'd like to think it is, I think it's a bit of a stretch at this point. A sub-500 team at home, in a game where you really did not play very well as shortstop, Gregorius, you're really seeing the warts, and not just in the field, at the plate. To me, I would have a 3-man rotation with Gregorius, Bohm, and Torreyes, and I'd play Torreyes almost every day, whether you alternate him at short and third, whatever you do, but just because he's the best defender of the 3 at short and at third, and Bohm really isn't hitting and Gregorius isn't hitting. So to me, you go for the guy who's a better defender and the guy who has a better average than the other 2 guys too. Not as much power, but has had some big hits and has outperformed what anybody would expect. And to me, that's what I would do. I'm sure Zach Wheeler would prefer that, and Aaron Nola.
Absolutely. Tom, also looking ahead, you mentioned how they need more pitching. I did find it interesting that they didn't get Richard Rodriguez from Pittsburgh along with Tyler Anderson in this deal, considering they need bullpen help. But we also know they need help in the lineup. That center field is basically the equivalent of a Adubel Herrera and Luke Williams and company being out there is like putting duct tape on a hose that you need to replace in your car.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, okay, you put the duct tape on there. So you need some help out there in center field. I know Starling Marte, a lot of Philly fans are messaging me throughout the last 2 weeks saying, we need Starling Marte. So if you're the Phillies, what do you prioritize then? Do you get a little more hitting depth and take care of center field with a rental, or do you go out and get more pitching to get you more depth out there?
Yeah, well, it also, to me, Josh, it would come down to cost. If you're going to get Starling Marte or Chris Bryant, it's probably going to cost you more than a decent reliever than like Rodriguez, let's say. Somebody like that would probably be a prospect or 2. So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, how all in are you? Because to me, do you think is it all about just making the playoffs, or are you actually think when you get in the playoffs, like Dombrowski said earlier, with the top 3, he thinks they could compete with anybody in a best of 5 or best of 7 series. But the way they play defense, and their struggles in general in terms of with runners in scoring position, I'm not sure that even if you add a reliever, I don't know that this team has enough, to compete with the Dodgers and the Giants. And I know they beat the Brewers in the series earlier this year, but in a 5 or 7 game playoff series, I'm not sure that this team, would be able would be able to beat those kinds of teams. So to me, it depends what you're trying to do here. What's your goal? Is to win it all, you have to upgrade in center field, because center field, even though Jankowski's been okay until he became the umpteenth Philly going on the COVID list, he's not going to be a difference maker in the playoffs. That's the biggest black hole you have, and you could probably use a bench bat too, which maybe you could get somebody like that for a single A prospect or something like that, or another kind of relatively minor deal.
Tom Moore joining us here on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. Follow him on Twitter at Tom Moore, Philly sports columnist for the Bucks County Courier-Times. Tom, you also covered the Sixers for a very long time. I want to ask you about the Sixers because, there's a lot of smoke going on around this team. You got Windhorst reporting that the Phillies are a top suitor for Kyle Lowry. You have Jake Fisher reporting that the Raptors and the Sixers are deep in the talks, or more advanced talk they have about any team about Ben Simmons. You have Woj suggesting that he wouldn't be surprised the Sixers get a deal for Ben Simmons done this week. Shams is tweeting out there that Kyle Lowry would like to go to the Sixers. It seems like there's all this smoke around this Lowry, Simmons, Sixers, Raptors thing. So what do we buy into all? Do we buy anything into all of this?
Well, I mean, apparently Lowry wants 3 years and $90 million. And to me, at 35 years old, that doesn't make sense to me. If he was 31, maybe something like that, that would be reasonable. But I don't know that you're going to give up Ben Simmons and the best player you're getting back. No offense to Kyle Lowry from, Cardinal Doherty and Villanova, but I don't think that's enough. I think that would be more of a sign and trade, with Danny Green or something like that, possibly. If the best player they get back for Ben Simmons is Kyle Lowry, to me, that's not enough. You need to get another star and a guy in the prime of his career, or at least is going to give you a couple more quality, high-level all-star years. And Kyle Lowry's very good, but as I said, he's 35. If they could have got him at the trade deadline this past year in the final year of a contract, that would have made sense to me. But that I don't understand, and I'm not sure. Now, maybe if it's a 3-team deal where Lowry goes somewhere else and Simmons goes there, and they get somebody from a third team, I could see something like that. But to me, it doesn't make sense that if he's the centerpiece in a package for Ben Simmons, I'm pretty sure you can do better than that.
Tom, I'm glad you said 3-team deal, because I have been scratching my head now for a couple of weeks now that I don't see a scenario where a mano-a-mano deal for the Sixers is going to be their benefit, because a lot of the teams that have called supposedly of interest in them don't really all have the best options for them. So, okay, maybe you have to get 2-3 teams involved, and Daryl Morey has a history of that, does he not, of getting multiple teams involved in these kind of trades?
Yeah, he's the master of the blockbuster. I mean, he acquired, Harden in 2012 from Oklahoma City, when he was with the Rockets. He has traded for some, major, some all-stars, and made some blockbuster moves. So, yeah, it's just, maybe they could get, a star from one team and then a very good supporting player from another team. But, I think he'd prefer, Damian Lillard. But if that happens, that, he's going to be on the market, and that sounds like he's not, but it sounds like he could. He's 31. They lost in the first round this past year. He averaged 35 against the Nuggets, played tremendously. He's only been past, I think he made the conference finals once and only won 2 other playoff series in, whatever it is, 10 years there. So it's been a long time and not a lot of success. So if he says, I want to be traded, a lot of teams are going to probably give, be willing to give up a lot. And to me, if the Sixers are going to land him, it's going to have to be, it would have to be Simmons. It would probably have to be Maxey. It would have to be one other player, whether it's Thibault or, whatever they want, Curry, whatever. And a pick or two, first-round pick or two, and possible, pick swaps too. It's going to be a massive package to get Lillard, even though he's 31. He's got 2 more years on his contract, and then I believe he's got another year. He's got 3 more years on his contract, and he's got a player option. So you have him for 3 years. So your window to win now is 3 or 4 years. Embiid's 27. He should be in the prime of his career. Those two guys playing together, a two-man game, assuming Tobias Harris is still here, that's a pretty good core. And that's two, elite top 10 players in the NBA together. But it's going to take a lot probably to get him unless something unforeseen happens.
Tom Moore joining us here on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN, sports columnist for the Bucks County Courier-Times, covering all the top Philly stories of the day with us here on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. Tom, I'm going to flip it over to the Eagles. I want to get your thoughts on this whole Zach Ertz situation, because Zach Ertz reports training camp. Obviously, there was speculation he would be traded this offseason. It didn't happen. What are your thoughts on the whole thing? Do you think Ertz should stay here? Do you think a team is just buying their time? What do you think?
Well, it sounds like they couldn't get more than like a 6th-round pick for him, and they weren't going to just give him away. I think it's pretty clear Goddard is the number one tight end. I guess you wait and you hope that, maybe somebody has an injury, maybe a contender has an injury, and really needs a tight end, and then the price tag goes up a little bit. I don't think he'll be a distraction, but, he was the guy here. He was the star. His goal was to break Witten's single-season record for, receptions and tight end yardage, passing yardage in a season, and it's just kind of it just hasn't worked out, for a number of reasons. Very good at catching the ball, but not nearly as good after the catch as somebody like Goddard. I guess they'll hold on to him and see. It's not the worst thing to have him, but to have a guy, who doesn't really fit here, who's not going to be here long term, you have to weigh that versus what can you get for him. And maybe if something happens, if somebody gets hurt, you could get a 3rd or 4th round pick, and then maybe you move him, and you move on.
The Eagles have made some interesting moves this offseason. They added Anthony Harris. They've now added Steven Nelson. They added Eric Wilson on the defensive side of the ball. Do those 3 guys plus their draft picks represent enough to improve a defense that after a few injuries just didn't have enough depth at all?
Yeah, that remains to be seen. I think the secondary got better. Linebackers, I'm not sure. I know they don't really prioritize linebackers, but, I'm not sure about that group. The D-line, what is Fletcher Cox? Can he kind of bounce back and have a Fletcher Cox type year, which they really need from him, to get double teamed and, help the other guys, get to the quarterback. And it's a new system. How does that change responsibilities? Obviously, it's going to be different. It's not going to be the same. But the defense is going to have to keep them in games. They're not going to win a lot of games. I don't think, 38-35. The defense is going to have to, keep them in games for them to, have a chance at a winning record, in my opinion.
He's Tom Moore. Check out all of his work over at the Bucks County Courier-Times. They currently have the 10 best and 10 worst Sixers draft picks over there. He covers all the Philly sports teams at Tom Moore Philly on Twitter. And he joins us here on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. Tom, great stuff today. I appreciate you covering all the bases with us.
Sure, anytime, Josh. Take care.
Josh Hennig here on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. We'll get back to your guys' thoughts and comments next. Keep them coming. 609-403-0973 is the text board. Also live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Join the conversation there. And don't forget the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. Send a message into the show on the app. It's free. Thanks to First Bank of Sea Isle City.
Turn it on. Leave it on. The Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN.
Hello, Cape May County. This is County Commissioner Len Desiderio with an update on our continuing vaccination efforts. Thanks to the hard work of the people of Cape May County, we have one of the lowest infection rates in the state and one of the highest rates of vaccination. Over 55,000 Cape May County residents have gotten the COVID vaccine. Now we are taking our vaccine efforts on the road. The Cape May County Department of Health will be taking its mobile vaccine clinic to local municipalities. You can also go to the Department of Health every Wednesday and walk in for a vaccine. For information on when the mobile vaccine clinic will be near you, please call 609-465-1065 1187 or go to CapeMayCountyNJ.gov. The people of Cape May County have done the hard work to slow the spread and get vaccinated. Let's all finish strong, safely together.
Now, back to the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN.
Josh Hennig back here on the Sports Bash, 97.3 ESPN FM, 97.3 ESPN mobile app, powered by First Bank of Seattle City. We are live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Sports Bash being brought to you by Matt Black Kia. At Matt Black Kia, they want to get you approved today. That's Matt Black Kia on the Black Horse Pike, Egg Harbor Township. Visit them online at mattblackkia.com. If you missed any of our conversations today with Tom Moore, just joined us, sports columnist with Bucks County Courier-Times, Jeff Nadu. Earlier in the show, Football Forward, Andrew DiCecco. You can catch them all during the best of hour coming up next instead of game night, because yours truly has been filling in for Mike Gill here on 97.3 ESPN. Or you can subscribe to the 97.3 ESPN YouTube channel. For those of you watching the show right now, that's where you guys are watching the show at. Or you can follow us on 97.3 ESPN on Twitter or Facebook. Check out 97.3ESPN.com for all your Phillies, Eagles, Sixers, and Flyers coverage, as well as high school sports. And, of course, that's all also on the 97.3 ESPN mobile app, which you can also use, thanks to First Bank of Seattle City, to contact the show. Send a message to 609-403-0973 or through the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. And we are also live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. I will momentarily read for you the NFL spokesman, their PR guy, Brian McCarthy, issued a statement on the Deshaun Watson situation. So I'll get that to you guys in just a moment. First, we have another message that came in from Tom and Margate. So Tom and Margate, if you guys remember, last week I did the for Happy Hour Friday, what are you guys drinking this weekend? And Tom said he had to keep the whiskey handy because the Phillies driving up the wall. Tom follows up and says, I will keep the whiskey in my bullpen after the Tyler Anderson trade. Maybe we still get Hamels. You know, the Hamels thing is complicated. We talked about it with Frank Klose earlier in the show, with Bob Wankel yesterday. After what Dombrowski said over the weekend, it seems like Hamels is the fallback option because Frank Klose was saying earlier in the show that Hamels wants more money than teams willing to give him to sign. And Wankel was saying, Bob Wankel from Crossing Broad was saying yesterday on the Sports Bash that the Hamels thing is Hamels is not signing with a team unless he's sure that team can give him actual starts. And that follows up what Dombrowski said over the weekend, which was this idea that Hamels is going to a team that can guarantee him a starting spot and that the Phillies don't know if they can promise him that until after the trade deadline later this week. So maybe we get Hamels, maybe we don't. I don't know. I tend to believe that Cole Hamels has been on the record saying that he would love to come back to Philadelphia. Him and his wife still do charity work in the city. He has a lot of strong feelings for the town. The fans still love him. And I think he would come back to Philadelphia. The question is, can the Phillies give him what he wants? So even if the Phillies can't give him the money he wants, can they say, look, we can promise you a starting spot whenever you're healthy? But that would be stipulatory on they get no more starting pitching before the deadline. So Tyler Anderson, think about it this way. The Phillies rotation right now is Wheeler, Nola, Anderson, Eflin, and some variation of Matt Moore, Velasquez, Howard in the 5 slot. So if that's your rotation right now, and you don't acquire any more starting pitching, then yes, maybe you do get Cole Hamels. Maybe Cole Hamels is a possibility. But if you do acquire another starting pitcher, then I think Hamels is unlikely. Get to more of your messages throughout, but I want to read this statement from the NFL because I've been telling you guys throughout the show, not just today, but the last 2 days, that as long as Deshaun Watson as long as the Deshaun Watson situation is out there, I'm kind of out. Okay, I'm out on him until he is cleared of all of his legal issues, civil and otherwise. Then I am out on him altogether. I have zero interest. Now, here's what the NFL has to say about the situation. Quote, the NFL is reviewing of the serious allegations Deshaun Watson remains an ongoing and active investigation. We are cooperative with the Houston Police Department in ensuring the NFL's inquiry does not interfere with their investigation. The NFL PR goes on to say, quote, as we continue to gather additional information and monitor law enforcement developments, we will make appropriate decisions consistent with the collective bargaining agreement and the personal conduct policy. They finished the statement by saying, quote, at this time, there is no restrictions on Watson's participation in club activities. That's from the NFL as of 40 minutes ago. I think that's the hugest cop-out ever by the NFL. I think it's a horrible job by the league to just leave it so ambiguous. But it's completely consistent with the league being completely incapable of making a decision with any consistency. Again, I stated earlier, if you're an NFL team, you can't trade for Deshaun Watson. I don't care who you are. I don't care what your situation is at quarterback. You have 22 women who are accusing him in civil court of some despicable sexual things. According to Watson's lawyer, he told Pro Football Talk that there is pending 10 criminal cases against him. And 2 of those cases had nothing to do with the civil cases. So in theory, based on that information, you now have 24 women who are accusing Watson of some level of impropriety. The fact that the NFL can't just say, you know what, Deshaun, you got to go deal with your legal stuff and go leave the league for a while, all right? The fact that they just can't do that just screams pathetic. The league just can't make a decision. I will document it again and again here until I'm blue in the face. Dante Stallworth, drinking and driving, kills somebody, goes to jail, suspended, comes back. Greg Hardy never goes to jail, suspended, comes back. Ray Rice, never charged with a crime, banned from the league. What do I do with that information? Josh Brown, banned from the league before he was ever put in cuffs for his domestic violence. This league's inconsistency is pathetic. If the league can't finish their investigation in a timely manner, then hire new people. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to see that this is bad. It's a bad look. So that's the latest from the NFL on Deshaun Watson. I'm out on Watson. I think that somebody should tell him to go home and stay away until he deals with his off-the-field issues. If they did it to Adrian Peterson years ago, they could do it to Deshaun Watson. One more thing I want to hit on before I leave. So you probably saw the news that Simone Biles stepped away from the United States women's team competition in the final day of competition. They ended up getting silver. They lost to the ROC entity. Technically doesn't represent Russia, but they are Russian athletes. So the Russians won the gold in women's gymnastics. Simone Biles came out and basically said that, it was a mental health thing. And I think that when it comes to all of these mental health conversations, that we got to treat this by a case-by-case basis. I saw somebody on Twitter compare the Simone Biles situation to Kyrie Irving. And to me, they're completely different. And I know that we can't judge people 100% because mental health is such a broad spectrum. But what does Simone Biles do after she pulled herself out? Remember, she had 2 difficult landings on the vault and on the beam. She struggled to literally finish her routines. But when she pulled herself out of competition, she went back onto the floor, cheered on her teammates, helped them get set up for routines, talked them through the pre-thought process. She was still there for her teammates. She was still supporting them, even though she had to pull herself out of the situation for what she considered mental health. There is a huge difference between that and someone like Kyrie Irving, who uses mental health as a reason to not talk to the media, or Naomi Osaka, who doesn't want to deal with the media, blaming it on mental health. I'm very uncomfortable with the world we live in now, that we're using mental health as an excuse. Simone Biles didn't do it. Other athletes are. I'm Josh Hennig. Have a great night.
This is Billy Schweim. Join me this Friday night for 97.3 ESPN's live coverage of the Dutch Hoffman Memorial Lifeguard Races from the beach in Wildwood. Coverage starts from 6 to 8 p.m.
The Dutch Hoffman Memorial Lifeguard Races is being brought to you by McCann Realtor, serving Seattle City since 1939. Dino's Subs and Pizza, located on Ventnor Ave in Margate. Blitz's Market with 2 locations in Ocean City at 21st and 34th Streets. Lee's Builders of Margate with over 30 years of experience. Coastline Insurance Company, serving South Jersey beach communities since 1998.